uniforms from SCORE American Soccer Company Incorporated in the amount of $27,097 for the fall 2009 and spring 2010 season. Number 9, Weddington right-of-way, a resolution authorizing the donation of right-of-way along Weddington Drive containing .09 acres and being part of the parcel number 765-13741-007, and authorizing the mayor to execute deeds and all other necessary papers to transfer ownership of the property to the Arkansas State Highway Commission. I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as read.
Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to remove number 8 on the soccer uniforms from the consent. I have some questions about how that's funded.
All right. Where would you like to?
At the end of new business.
Okay. What does that take? We got to take a motion in a second to remove it? Or
No,
just remove
if
it?
it's not
No.
unanimous, it's removed.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent with removing item number 8.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the amended agenda, consent agenda. Shall the motion pass?
Petty,
Yes.
Rhodes,
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Teal,
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. B, unfinished business. Number 1, RZN 09-3271, Sale Barn Campus Crest LLC, 562. An ordinance rezoning that property described in rezoning petition RZN 09-3271 for approximately 8.87 acres located at the old Washington County Sale Barn north and east of 11th Avenue and Government Avenue from I-1 Heavy Commercial Light Industrial to DG Downtown General. This ordinance was left on the first reading at the June 16, 2009 City Council meeting. I will entertain a motion to go to the second reading.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to go to the second reading. Shall the motion pass?
Petty,
Yes.
Rhodes,
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Teal,
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
An ordinance rezoning that property described in rezoning petition RZN 9-3271 for approximately 8.87 acres located at the old Washington County Sale Barn, north and east of 11th Avenue and Government Avenue from I-1 Heavy Commercial Light Industrial to Downtown General.
Staff?
Mayor, members of the council, Jeremy Pate, Development Services Director. I don't really have any additional information for you tonight. This item was left on the first reading at the last meeting. I do believe the applicants have some information to present to you regarding their application this evening. So.
Okay. I might ask you to shut off your cell phones, please. Thank you very much. Okay, I assume that the council, any comments from the council? Do you want to hear from the public, or do you want to make a statement, or what do y'all got? You want to hear from the public? Okay, we will hear from the public at this time. Remember, when you come to the microphone, everybody gets one turn at the microphone, unless an alderman brings you back up to ask questions of you. Be brief as you can be, and I want everybody to be civil to one another. The one thing that I want to remind you of, we are discussing the rezoning. The rezoning is what we're discussing, and the density, you can discuss the density of the rezoning, but not any particular project, okay? I want everybody to understand that before you get up here. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, point of order, will the applicant have an opportunity to present after public comment?
You may.
Mr. Mayor and City Board, my name is Leonard McCandless. I'm the president of the Board of Directors of the Ozark Military Museum at Drake Field. Today in a general meeting, our membership voted unanimously to oppose the changing of the, property of the sale barn, thinking it could be better used as an addition to the National Cemetery. And the Fayetteville National Cemetery is really a place of honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Who will be next?
Mr. Mayor, Commander Sam Sansom, United States Navy, retired. I live in 16120 Onda Mountain Road, West Fork, Arkansas. I'm president of the Fayetteville chapter of the Military Officers Association of America, also secretary of our council for the state. We have membership of about 70 members, total about 120, maybe 130 members when the spouses are considered, and they are very well considered. Many of our members joined the military. They were Fayetteville sons. They left Fayetteville, joined the military, did their careers, and returned, and they were welcomed. They were not turned away by the city of Fayetteville, finishing up their careers and starting other businesses. It seems sad that they were not turned away in being welcomed back to Fayetteville. But in less than 15 years, possibly as little as 13 years, when those members begin to leave this world, they could very well be turned away from the National Cemetery in Fayetteville, their home city, if this rezoning goes through. The 70 members of the Military Officers Association Fayetteville chapter requests that the rezoning not go through. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Come on.
Steve Drasnick, 1323 East Township Street, Fayetteville. I am not a veteran, but I have the deepest respect and honor for those who are veterans. I strongly oppose the rezoning of this property and hope that the veterans may have that to increase the size of the cemetery.
Thank you. Okay.
Vess Lobaugh, 2916 North Old Wire Road in Fayetteville. I'm the State Commander of the Military Order of the Purple Heart. We strongly oppose the rezoning of the property in question. This abuts hallowed ground. It is one of the oldest national cemeteries in the United States, and we would like to see an expansion of the military cemetery in that area. Rather than buildings that would be adjacent to it that would not enhance the cemetery itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Ray Pointer, Fayetteville. I've lived here 40 years now, and I'm very strongly opposed rezoning. Well, I fought in World War II, Korea, and 2 tours in Vietnam. Now I think about being buried with my wife in that cemetery. I strongly oppose the rezoning.
Thank you. Who's next?
Mr. Mayor, council members, I'm Jim Buckner. I'm Senior Vice Commander of the Military Order of the Purple Heart, Department of Arkansas. Spoke here last time. I think you know my position, but I want to emphasize the fact that the worst possible neighbor to a national cemetery would be university students. And to allow this rezoning to go forward is probably going to come close to desecrating that holy ground. So I urge you not to approve the rezoning from industrial to general business general. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Who's next? No one?
I'm Sue Madison, and I represent this area. I want to go over a little bit of history, which is very hard to find. I've had the assistance of the city clerk, your archives person, as well as the planning office. We believe the barn was built sometime in the 30s at the corner of the west corner of Dunn and 11th Street intersection. Nobody can find a building permit. There was no zoning back then. It wasn't until the 50s that some sort of simple zoning came to Fayetteville. I think A, B, C, D, E, F were the zoning categories. Real zoning came in the 60s. The sale barn was an existing use. It could have been a non-conforming use and remain a non-conforming use, which would have, made a little bit of a cloud on the property. Instead, the city found a zone that fit the use. So it was zoned I-1B. So it's not as if the planners at the time looked at that part of Fayetteville and said that would be an ideal place for an industrial zone. They just made the zoning fit the use that was there. About that time, 2 subdivisions were platted down there. A Ferguson addition that is north of 11th Street and Wilson Dunn that's south of 11th Street. And the Ferguson is approximately where that gravel parking is over on the east side now. All of it was zoned R2 at the time. That was for smaller lots with single houses. 8th, 9th, and West Streets are platted through there. They're on the plat. I know there's been some talk that the zoning you're considering would be a down zoning. I want you to consider that it really isn't a down zoning just because the city has been so accommodating to the Bartholomews with this particular piece of property, more or less tailoring our zoning to fit his use. In 1960, they vacated an alley that ran down the middle of Block 17 in Ferguson's. That's where that parking is. So we vacated an alley that added to their property. In 1965, parts of Block 17 were rezoned at their request from R2 to I1 to once again fit some uses they anticipated. In 2002, they constructed a roof over some holding pens without a building permit that violated the setback for that zoning district. Once again, the city was very accommodating to the Bartholomews. We granted a 50-foot variance in the required setback so that the structure would be conforming. The zoning that you're considering would allow up to 4 stories. I can only find 2 two-story buildings down there north of the cemetery. Nothing else in that neighborhood is anywhere near that high. So I'd ask that you consider the many accommodations that the city has made for this property and try to respect the neighborhood down there and find a zoning use that would be more appropriate given the National Cemetery nearby and the quiet neighborhood that is there. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else?
I'm Colonel Harold J. Perry, 1822 Appleberry Drive in Fayetteville. I've been a resident for 40-plus years. I've seen Fayetteville grow. I spent 21 years in the service, retired, and then I spent 20 years teaching in the Fayetteville area. I have a great deal of experience here, and I've seen this little plot of ground that we called our cemetery. And you look around and you wonder, well, where am I going to be put? I'm being blunt about this. We forget that we have young men who are fighting for our country now who are dying. They're coming home. Do we send them 40, 80, 120 miles away, or can they come home? I want to come home. I want to be buried here in Fayetteville. Now, somewhere along the line, people can realize that all of a sudden, this has gotten all of the organizations together. This is the glue. And now they realize that they're going to have to work in order to get this together. I'm willing to work. And I know a lot of people have called me and said, Hal, what can we do? The money, everybody says, well, where are the veterans going to get money? Watch us. All we need is for you to recognize the fact that we need a place to expand. I've seen the college build apartments for students on campus. They realized that they didn't need them. They tore them down. We have apartments in Fayetteville who can't be filled because the students don't want to go there. They want to live on campus. I've seen all this happen in my 40 years. And I hope that I can impress you with the fact that Fayetteville has grown. But we want to grow too. Help us to grow. Let me be buried in my own cemetery. Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Who else?
Hi, my name is Marion Kanatka. I live on South College Avenue. And all I have to say is I have been going around that neighborhood just looking at it because I live on South College opposite Walker Park. And I think if the zoning was allowed to be changed, it would really wreck that nice little neighborhood. There are small houses and there are people that, you know, have to really work hard for a living, but please consider them in your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
Your Honor, my name is Major Allen Yount, U.S. Army retired. I'm not a resident of Fayetteville. I'm a resident of Bentonville. I've been here 2 years following my daughter from Louisiana. I came here from Fort Polk. It's my first time to see the cemetery. I just came from there. It's a beautiful place. I found out about this meeting and the agenda as a fluke when I went to the barber this morning. There was an article in the newspaper. After reading through the agenda and the part of the program that addresses this, I'd like to voice my opinion as a military member of opposing the proposed rezoning and ask that it be reconsidered. And I strongly support what you're doing for the cemetery. I strongly support the people who are in favor of voting against the rezoning and ask that it be considered for an appropriate zoning that befits the National Cemetery and the residential area in the area. And thank you very much for allowing me to be a visitor to your city. One day, perhaps, I might be residing here 6 feet under. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Johnny Walker. I'm a born and raised Fayettevillian. I've talked to several of you council members I know, but I'm going to take a little different angle. I'm trying to adhere to Mayor Jordan's guidelines of not approaching the development issue. My concern is learning from our mistakes of the past years, large-scale developments coming in and not being well-funded, or what we thought were well-funded kind of coming in with a big agenda, and then now we're fighting foreclosures. Right now, I'm sure that as council members, y'all know what the vacancy rates are in Fayetteville apartments. If you drive down Huntsville Road right now, you see signs free rent. You've got brand new apartment complexes that have on Huntsville Road that have one apartment filled up right now. The vacancy rate is my biggest concern, and with this development or rezoning, then we're going to be adding to that problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Casita. I live on West Avenue. I feel that now that the sale barn is closed, that the zoning, the commercial zoning is really inappropriate. And I also feel that the RMF 20 Downtown General is inappropriate because neither one fit a small single-family neighborhood. I looked at the land use maps for 2025, and it looks like to me that our neighborhood is to be a neighborhood, and a neighborhood means homes and families. It doesn't appear to me that I don't understand the land use map, but I assume that it means single-family homes. We are a small neighborhood with modest homes and a possible large-scale apartment complex, because it could allow up to 24 units per acre, will severely impact it, even considering that there's already another one just on the other side, maybe 3 blocks away, that's going to house up to 800 people. It doesn't fit with the National Cemetery. And I believe it's our responsibility as a community to ensure that the cemetery is protected. I'm not against development. I'm not against progress. I think that maybe condos or mixed use with business and apartments would be great. But a possible 3 or 4 story just doesn't sit well with me. I'm a homeowner, and I want to protect my home, my investment, my peace of mind. It's quiet there. I spend most of my time there. I don't want it to change. But like I said, I'm not against progress, just something less intense. I don't feel that this would be a real downzoning at all. Because right now it's quiet, and 24 units per acre, I don't know how many air conditioners that would be, but it sure sounds, it would be a droning sound in the middle of the night. Preserving our small, modest neighborhood and the National Cemetery is what this community wants. Please do not rezone to downtown general. Please look at our neighborhood, see if there's some other kinds of options that our whole neighborhood could benefit and blossom and grow to accommodate all of us and still give the neighbors who live in single-family homes the opportunity to have their peace and quiet. Thank you.
Can I ask Kathy a question?
Yes, you can.
Kathy, could I ask you something?
Yes.
Did I understand you right? You said that you thought a mixed-use development with businesses and condos would be appropriate?
I think that that wouldn't be so bad as if it wasn't 24 units per acre. I think that downtown general, if there was some other kind of zoning that fits that model.
No, downtown general is specifically what that was created
Right.
for, and those kind of uses are not allowed in other zonings.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make sure.
Well,
we were
then
clear
maybe
about that.
I'm not for that then, if it means that. So I really am. I'm against the downtown general. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Who would be next?
My name is Jack Wright. I live at 1655 Desark Way on the west side of Fayetteville. I am a veteran. My wife and I moved here about 10 years ago, and we are pleasantly surprised to find that this town has an asset. And I think that asset I'm speaking of is the National Cemetery for veterans. And I think everyone agrees that the place will have to have some room to move, and or to expand. And if there's no place for that to go, I think that would be just a terrible thing for this community. So I urge you not to make any changes in the zoning that would prevent that from happening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Honorable Mayor, honorable directors. My name is Sam Guido. I'm a veteran, and I'm up here to speak. I didn't hear everything, but I'd like you to give us a chance. Let us raise this money. They want $2 million, is it, for this lot? I disapprove of building a house there. I want you to give this land to the veterans. And if they need the money, give us another couple of years and we'll raise it. I'm willing to give 1 month of my retirement, Marine Corps pay, to initiate that. And I'm sure we could get it, but we need some time. This is too fast. I go by reading in the paper. Now, of course, the zone has been approved, right? The planning commission approved this?
Yes, but it's got to pass the
And
city
it's up
council.
to you people. If you approve it, then they're going to build a house there. You disapprove it?
Yes, if the
So,
city
I
council approves this,
request
there will be a part.
that you give the veterans a little time,
The rezoning.
okay? And I'm sure we could come up with this money. Is it $2 million?
I'm
Now,
not
you
sure
could
what the
help us
prices
out
are.
by
I hate to
raising the
discuss
sales
prices
tax.
at the city council.
You could get, the county could give us some money, the federal government, the grants. We need this land bad, because the wars are coming, believe me. We don't know how many men died, and when they come, we need the space. Now, when I was in New York, they had the same thing. They built all these houses around this national cemetery, and when the Korean War broke out, they had to go buy land way the hell on the end, lots. And that could happen here. We have the land close, and it'd be easy for everybody. So, of course, the guy wants to sell the land. He wants $2 million, right?
Yes, I believe the price is $2 million. That's what I read in the paper anyway.
If you give us
So
a
let's-
chance, the veterans, I'm sure we can
You've
come
pinned
up
me
with
down on
give
that
us
one.
another year. I don't represent I belong to the Disabled American Veterans, the VFW, but I'm doing my share. I want to help. And the congressman made a speech. Words mean a lot, but he could give too. All these congressmen talk, they're going to do this, and do that, but they don't produce what the money to them out, see? So we could get the money. But give us a couple years. I appreciate if you could honor that request. And I think that veterans deserve this. They've been pushing us veterans around, especially these retirees like me. We have to pay for our medical care now. They take money out of my VA disability. I don't see that. When I retired from the Marine Corps, I had a contract, 20 years, whatever I got to have paid. Now I have to give so much of that to the VA. They're always talking about money, money, money. You understand? And the veterans are taking a beating. I'll be honest with you. The military retirees, these veterans in fighting our wars, they deserve better. So my request that I need a little more time, I want to go out of my way. Okay? Give us a year or 2 years. And I don't want you to give this here deal to the house, to build that big apartment out. Who the hell wants to build a house in a cemetery? I can't understand that. The ghosts, the people, them veterans that come out of their graves and haunt them people. Hey, understand? You people are doing it for the tax money, to get the money from the buildings, right? Don't look at it the money angle. Look at it the service that the veterans gave to the country. Especially he's dead, they can't fight. So I'm speaking up for the people that went before me. I might die too tomorrow. I'll be buried there too. Now the space, you can't know. You don't know how many veterans are going to die in these wars. It'll last 500. When you have a war, you don't know how many veterans are going to die. We need the space. So to give us a chance. If we can't get it in 2 years, then they could build 10 houses around here. I'm sure we can make. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much.
Time.
We appreciate your service. Thank you.
That's a tough act to follow.
Yes, it is. I'd hate to step to the microphone.
I'll try. I'm Robert Williams, 957 South Hill. I'm a strong supporter of a person's property rights. I believe that you have a right to sell your property. There's a time for everything under the sun. And apparently Mr. Bartholomew's right to sell barn has ended, and he needs to sell it. And I am for rezoning it, whatever will rezone it to be a cemetery, and a cemetery only, a veteran cemetery to attach onto that and pay him a fair price for his land. In 10 days, the permanent fencing will be going around the Aspen Ridge Hill, or the Hill Place project now, the permanent fencing. I still have unresolved drainage issues up there, or behind my house. He alluded to Congressman Bozeman's speech, but I see he's in full support of it, and he's going to earmark it. And the last thing I wanted to say was that on Hill Place assumed all liabilities and promises made by Aspen Ridge, was my understanding. So With that said, the turn signals on the traffic signals on 6th Street turning onto Hill either way are still not there. And I was wondering when they will be. And
Mr. Williams, try and stay with the rezoning of the property at hand.
Okay,
I mean,
well-
Hill
I know, but
project is an entirely different
I guess
discussion.
the deal is, Mayor, is that there's still problems going on with that project. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Good evening. It's good to see everybody again. My name is Justin Eichman. I'm an attorney, resident of Fayetteville. I'm here on behalf of Billy Joe Bartholomew. I'm just going to address a few brief points today, if that's okay. I'm going to try to keep it concise as possible. Just like Senator Madison, I'd like to take one step back and look a little bit of the history of the sale barn, if we could. I was speaking with Billy Joe earlier today and found out that the sale barn, in fact, was begun right around 1936. 7 generations of his family, 7 decades have passed since then, and 5 generations of his family have worked at this business that has been a sort of a mainstay in South Fayetteville for some time. And I suppose as the generations passed and the older generation stepped aside, the newer one would step up to work. And just as that occurred, and decade by decade, new generations came, times changed in Fayetteville as well. And where there used to be a rural character and a very different nature on that part of town over the decades, that has changed, and that has affected businesses that have been there, just like the sale barn. Over the past probably 8 to 10 years, and I was speaking to Billy Joe about this earlier today, he has been speaking with individuals from either associated with the cemetery or interested in the growth of the cemetery. These are casual conversations. It was with an individual who sadly now is deceased, but they would be casual. They would be a little more, have a little more context to them sometimes, be a little more serious regarding the issue of expanding the cemetery. I think we can all agree that the expansion of the cemetery is a very laudable goal, and it is a community concern. What I would be here, what I want to be here arguing to you today is that it's not exclusive to this rezoning, that there are other options out there. And I want to implore the council to do what I believe the mayor is instructing here today, is to stay on the issues of the rezoning. But as I mentioned, this has been a process that has been going on for a number of years. And over those number of years, there never has been a bona fide offer to come to Mr. Bartholomew. He has, over the last decade, the sale barn has been operating, and in his mind, he saw the times changing and probably need to get into something else. And like a lot of family businesses, his family wealth, his wealth is in that property, and that wealth goes at this sale, if it does happen, to the new business and to the new operation, and that is his livelihood. But over the past 8 to 10 years, when these discussions were taking place, never has there been an offer from a veterans group to purchase. Around about 3 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago, Campus Crest approached Mr. Bartholomew with the attempts to purchase the property, and he had to make a decision about whether to sell the business and to move on. Around about a year ago, approximately, a contract was entered into between Billy Joe and Campus Crest, and then the development process began. Pre-development, working with staff, getting staff support, Planning Commission, getting their recommendation, first reading here today, up into second reading, and still to this day there is no offer. And I think it is unreasonable and would certainly, and I can assure you, would certainly be a hardship on Mr. Bartholomew to say, stand back, wait 2 years, see if funding's going to happen, see if there is going to be an earmark by the federal government, see if the VA might become interested in this in the future, might want to acquire this property 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. I think we would all agree that that would be difficult on an individual whose wealth is tied up in that property, and who needs to survive by going on to the next business and establishing himself. And I mentioned earlier that about the concept of this rezoning and expansion of the cemetery not being exclusive of each other. I've been a resident of Fayetteville my whole life, and I've gone down around those parts throughout the years. I hadn't been recently, but I did go down there recently. One of the things I noticed was there was a Lindsay sign on a rather large chunk of property to the north touching the cemetery that I believe is owned residential in RMF 24. I've since looked at a few plat maps and seen that is contiguous to the cemetery. There are other lots that I understand are also available to sale. And I don't know if it's been on the radar of different people to look at maybe taking a piecemeal approach at acquisition of different properties in order to plan for growth. And that may be an easier thing instead of having to come up with a large sum of money through a federal appropriation or some other way, but to rather take smaller steps at it. And there are other properties available out there. This particular one is not the only avenue. So in closing, I know there has been a lot of comments here today regarding the cemetery expansion. I think that is a very laudable goal. I don't think that's exclusive. And there is another party here, and it's an individual, and I just want to make sure that it's understood that he has rights and interests and a livelihood to protect as well. So I always appreciate the attention that's granted to these matters by Fayetteville. So I want to thank you, and if there are any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer.
Adele.
Yes, I need, do you think during these contacts that the veterans had made with Mr. Bartholomew, did he let it be known that he would be agreeable to selling the property?
I think it was sort of a long-term process. My understanding is over a decade of talking about it, and I think it was something that was being contemplated and being talked about. The individual that he was mainly speaking to, I believe his name is Milo Crimston. I don't want to get the name wrong, and I apologize if I did. And the way Billy Joe described it, sometimes there would be coffee and talking, and then other times there would be some other people there saying, we are really serious about this, we want to do this, or we want to go to the congressman and see if they can do anything. And this was going on for a long period of time, like I said, 8 to 10 years. And then here we are at the very end of our of the development, not really the rezoning process, where this has come up again, and it seems like everybody's saying, stop, wait 2 years, and he can't stop and wait 2 years. And so that we're caught in the middle because we don't want this to be adversarial in any way, because the goal is laudable, the people are laudable. Everybody who's standing here before you deserves respect and deserves appreciation. And a final resting place for those who serve is a very important goal, and I think it's a goal for our country and a goal for our community. But when all that's being borne on one person and saying, turn your property into a park, to lay off for 2 years, let us raise all those sort of things, that's a really difficult burden, and it's kind of hard to be kind of stuck in between that. So I hope that consideration is given in this process.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Jessica.
Okay, thank you.
Hi there. I'm Michelle Rain. I live on South Dunn and one of the neighbors in that area. The last time we all met, we spent a lot of time describing our neighborhood and our concern about how any development that would add 4-story apartment buildings to our neighborhood would impact the quality of life for us. And I don't know if any of you have had a chance to drive through or walk through our neighborhood, but if you did, you would have seen a neighborhood, very small neighborhood, 7 or 8 blocks of single-family housing for the most part, some duplexes, an apartment complex, but nothing over 1 story. You also saw a neighborhood that has not yet had an opportunity to absorb the changes that are coming with Hill Place. And I myself was surprised to find speed tables on Hill Place today. Wasn't expecting it. But to me that says someone thinks that there's going to be a lot of traffic coming downhill and that speed tables are needed. So that's a part of our neighborhood that has been undergoing changes. And here we are again talking about the other end of our neighborhood about to undergo some changes. Except for the sale barn, the rest of our neighborhood is zoned RMF 24. But as I just described to you, our neighborhood has not been built to that zoning. So the zoning does not match what is built in that neighborhood. And the Planning Commission agreed that RMF 24 was not appropriate for that site. And that's when they recommended Downtown General. But the question now in my mind is Downtown General appropriate for our neighborhood? Downtown General would still allow a multi-story apartment building in our mostly single-family neighborhood. So I want to remind everyone that there's not any other property in that neighborhood that is built to the density that RMF 24 or Downtown General would permit, except for Hill Place, which we're not going to put back on the table. I believe it would be more effective to have the zoning reflect what the neighborhood already is, rather than trying to apply new zoning categories to one piece of our neighborhood, which is what that sale barn property is. This is one of the few places in Fayetteville where small single-family homes are still available. The neighborhood has existed like this for nearly 50 years, and so I'm concerned that this one zoning decision for one piece of property will have lasting effect on everyone else's property. And I'm asking the City Council to deny this zoning request so that the neighbors and the planning board working together can construct a plan that reflects the actual built environment of our entire neighborhood and develop a logical zoning plan for our area. Some have expressed concern that if this Downtown General request is denied, some other worse use could be approved for that property. That we need to accept this Downtown General as the lesser of two evils. I don't think we need to take that pessimistic a view. If other proposals are brought forward before our neighborhood becomes eligible for a planning charrette, the neighbors will simply trust in the process that we are engaged in tonight, and we'll all come back again and we'll talk together about the next appropriate use for our neighborhood. I want to echo what some of our other neighbors have said, and that we are not opposed to development on the property. The question before us all this evening is what is appropriate use of that property, and how can we make decisions that do not allow one piece of property to have lasting effect on all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I forgot one thing. If everyone who is opposed to the rezoning would stand up, I think that'd make a nice visual representation for the council.
Thank you. Okay, now that we've all managed to get up and stretch a little bit, now who will be next at the microphone?
I could use that.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Christie Peven, and I'm a resident of Ward 1, but I also grew up on South Hill Street, where my parents still live, and they reside in their own home at 920 South Hill. We moved into that property in 1952, and so they've been there 57 or so years. When we moved down into that neighborhood, that was a little bit of a rough neighborhood in the sense that it wasn't highly developed. It was on a dirt street. It wasn't, most of the houses down through there still had outhouses behind them. They weren't hooked onto the city sewer system. We did that after we moved into that house there. Bud's Mill was up the street at where that alleyway tees where the trail is going through for Hill Place. It was surrounded by a lot of agricultural and semi-industrial uses, trucking businesses, Bud's Mill, the railroad spur, the sale barn. One reason that those properties down there were attractive, however, was that they were small farmsteads. Each plot down through there was what would be the equivalent of 2 city lots deep, and they had a space for a garden. Many of our neighbors had chickens, pigs, milk cows in the back lot behind. Some of the houses still had smokehouses and other types of outbuildings and so on. And so that was a very attractive thing about that area, was the semi-agriculture nature of it when the residents began to move in there. We chose to buy there, we chose to live there, to be near the stockyard. You know, people will talk now about how, well, the stockyard is noisy, it's smelly, it has flies, there's trucks going in and out and so on. But that was a fair trade-off to be in that type of agricultural environment at the time that that was developed as a residential area. We liked the space, we liked the agri-lifestyle, and we were very near what were then brand new schools, the Fayetteville High School and T.L. Bates Elementary, so we were in walking distance to both of those schools. What we did not choose at any point of mine or my parents' life in that location was to live next to high-density dwellings. We didn't move into an area that had apartment buildings. There was no such thing down in there, and anything that came in later was shoehorned into small pieces of property. There were some trailer parks and so on, and most of those have sort of outlived their better days, and it's good. You know, we understand that property evolves and it has to change. But at the same time, that was a purely residential, mostly owner-occupied area, and there are people still living down in there and still trying to live their lives who did not bargain for having these huge student apartment complexes, what these developers call commercial or private dorms, right next door to them. That was not in the original deal. My dad's name was Arnold R. Christie, and he was a council member in the 50s and the 60s. He was a construction superintendent and a town plant manager for the Arkansas Western Gas Company. He helped do many projects here in the city of Fayetteville, such as getting the Fayetteville Fire Station built. There's still a plaque on the wall when you go in there to get your pancake breakfast. You know, you can read his name and others of who worked on getting that fire station built. He was one of the first people to work on a master street plan for the city of Fayetteville, just by the by. We're still fussing over it. The point that I want to make here tonight is that I am caring for them, trying to maintain both of my elderly parents in their own home, in their familiar surroundings. I want you council people sitting here to picture yourselves at the age of 91, living independently, living in your own familiar surroundings where you have always lived, and someone starting a project like this right next to you. The construction noise is one thing, the student life and the level of traffic, the abrupt change from residential owner-occupied houses to multi-story, multi-occupant, rented by the bedroom, this dorm-type apartments are even a little bit more transient than students who come in and rent individual apartments. When we discussed Aspen Ridge, or Hill Place as it's now called, we talked a whole lot about how originally the neighborhood had been happy to have the idea of that being developed. Some of the rougher parts of that neighborhood that were going downhill were raised, some of the trailer parks were taken out, but the original bargain was for owner-occupied condominiums. Then, because that was such a disaster, such trauma.
Stay with it. Stay with the rezoning.
Okay, I'm just
saying
that at that time, I stood here and said, we don't want a foot in the door for apartments down here in this area that is residential. And now, the minute that was on table, we're talking about another one in shouting distance of it. I just don't want my elderly parents sandwiched in between two of these types of enterprises, okay? They're going to live right down the street from Hill Place. I don't see why this is the best or the most appropriate use for the city sale barn property. We had asked in the Hill Place board meetings to please institute a comprehensive planning charrette, as we're discussing, to get some planning in place in these neighborhoods, because we knew they were going to change. We knew they were under pressure. You know, what had been individual families, the houses are being sold for rentals. There's there's going to be some urban renewal going in the south side. But at the same time, it's happening without any comprehensive planning being in place. So I am here to argue for us to hold off on this project, to go through that planning process, to find the best use, not just any use or the most immediately available use for this property before we take the tumble and determine what is going to be on one of the hilltops, you know, one of the highly visible, highly valuable, highly developable areas in that close-in area of the south side. I personally want to see it stay residential single-family as long as it can. I also, you know, we also grew up there right next, I mean, my backyard bumped up against the National Cemetery. What had been my horse pastures in the back, we have sold, and that has become part of the new expansion for the federal cemetery. When the first discussion began to come about how this was going to be sold,
to wrap up,
okay, then that was at the height of the real estate market. And the figure that was bandied about to Milo Crumston at that time was $3 million. And that seemed like a real lot of money when you have to have a friends organization who raises the money to buy this property and so on. And it was never my understanding that that was even it was put out on the market to him. That was just like, well, it may take $3 million to buy the sale barn property. So you have to understand how the cemetery thing works. There's a federal law in place that prohibits the United States government from buying any land. Yes, sir. But you need to hear this. They cannot buy land directly.
We've been hearing it for 10 minutes. We need to move along.
And that's why if the lawyer can plead for no more time, I'm here to plead for more time. No, sir, I'm talking about on making the purchase. I'm here to plead for, let's hold off on this rezoning. Let's give them time to get their act together and raise the money. You have to understand the history of what happened. Yes, maybe they'd been thinking about selling it for 10 years, but I think when the market got high, everybody kind of got dollar signs in their eyes. And the figure that was put out there was maybe beyond the reach of this Friends organization at that time. In the meantime, the Friends of the National Cemetery have lost two of their, what I call, angels. In theater...
I'm going to have to ask you to sit down.
In theater, you have a person who puts up the money. John Lewis and Milo Crumston have both died in the meantime. Please give us more time to try to let this group, they're the only people who can raise money and buy property. They need time to do it. It's a much more appropriate use for the land. This is not the project for this location. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Who will be next? Anyone?
I'm Leonard Schulte. I live at 1235 Southwest, 2 blocks south of the sale barn property. And I got here a little bit late. I heard Michelle's argument, and I'm just here to express that I would second her argument and again emphasize that this proposed project is really, at least in my view, incompatible with the neighborhood as it now exists. And so I would like to also support an effort to kind of include this area of town in the master plan, and so hold off on this rezoning until we can do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else?
I'm short and been short all my life, and I'll make this short. I represent the Northwest Arkansas Women Veterans. My name is Rosanna Falk, and my friend is Rita Miller. We agree that the cemetery should be as it is and extended and made into a peaceful, green, and serene surrounding. I, for one, can tell you what it is to live where there is a college complex. On August 18th, next month, I will be living in a college complex for 31 years. I have experienced everything from murder, people going to jail for rape, for break-ins, and also some nice people. I have friends in China, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Kosovo. And they still write to me, and they've been very, very nice people. But I believe I'm from northern Michigan. I will not be buried in this cemetery, but I am for every veteran. I love the veterans. And up in my little town is a cemetery that sits on a hill with pine trees and lilac bushes and overlooks Lake Superior, and our town is proud of our cemetery. And I think that's the way we should see our cemetery, and make it a place and where our veterans can rest in peace. But to have a complex, and 31 years, I know of everything, and I've met a lot of nice college kids, but there always is a lot of noise, a lot of loud radios, people coming and going at all times, and you always have loudness, but then there is the nice, quiet ones. But please, let's not build a complex there. Fayetteville does not need a complex. I am with, my landlord says he owns our complex, but I'm the boss. And I have my own parking place with a sign, and I love it there, even with all the things, but a cemetery is no place to put a college living quarters. And I hope that our boys and women will be able to rest there in peace. Thank you.
Thank you. Who will be next? Anyone?
Hi, my name's Tina Chamberlain. I am not from here. I do not live here. My family does live here. I am from Minnesota, where my husband's father lies in a military cemetery. We go there at least twice a year, and every time we go there, there's at least 3 acres or more new plots for our veterans. My father, who served in a couple different wars, lies in the plot where you guys are planning to build this college place, and my grandfather lies there. And he deserves, and all of our men and women who have fought for the freedom of this country deserves to be laid to rest in peace. There are going to be many more places that this college thing can go. It doesn't need to go there. You need to let our families and our veterans all rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else? Seeing none?
You got one.
Okay.
I'm Dustin Bartholomew in Ward 4. I have a question. Could I ask a question for city staff?
Ask me the question and then we'll let.
Okay. Is that area of town, is that part of the 2025 plan? Has that been considered in the 2025 plan?
Yes.
Okay. And is that area, as according to the 2025 plan, is that thought to be a place for density, or is that, as far as city staff is concerned?
Jeremy, you want to answer that?
Sure. That area in our 2025 plan is listed as designated as a city neighborhood area, which does include non-residential uses. It's still primarily residential. It encourages a denser and primarily residential urban fabric within a complete, compact, and connected neighborhood, which means our definition of a neighborhood does not just include just single-family neighborhoods. It includes the services that also support those single-family and multifamily residents, which are schools, shopping centers, things of that nature. I think the definition of a singular single-family neighborhood would provide a bedroom community, which is not what we're trying to provide. We're trying to provide a community that has services that also are hopefully within walking distance. So that's ultimately the intent of a city neighborhood area, is to provide those services within walking distance.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Seeing none, I will bring it back to Aubrey. Come on, if you need to talk. Okay.
Well, we've had some wonderful people say some wonderful things, but I thought a lot more people wanted to speak. I'm not sure. Some of them don't intend to still. But everything's been said is certainly pretty close to the mark. And I've been through a period with various developments coming. We've got cooperation and actually city cooperation and donors, and bought a little piece of property was about to be was approved for development, fully approved. And it did take a while to get the money from various donors. And I think that's true with the veterans right now. Nobody's mentioned Senator Lincoln. I talked to her Thursday morning at the airport. Some of you were out there, and I spoke to her last after the legitimate media talked to them, and she was very enthusiastic about supporting just as any way she could, and she said she would expect that we could get some federal help for the veterans to purchase the land. Okay, that's off topic a little bit, but zoning it for downtown general is inappropriate for the neighborhood, and it would be inappropriate for many, many, many things that could go in downtown general to be next door to it. So I strongly believe that this should not be zoned as proposed. Any question? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aubrey. Now, is there any other public comment? I'm going to close it to public comment. Now, we'll let the petitioners, Bob. Now, the longest anyone spoke here tonight has been about 10 minutes. So, can you do it in about 10 minutes?
Mr. Mayor, I can speak in less than 10
there
minutes.
There you
go. Our presentation.
I'll give you about 10 minutes because that's what I've given the longest speaker tonight.
Our presentation may exceed 10 minutes. Good evening. My name's Bob Estes. I'm a veteran. I stand here in front of you representing Campus Crest. With me this evening is Chris Russ. He is the Director of Development for Campus Crest. Because the issue before you is rezoning and the salient issue is land use, Chris is going to have some brief remarks regarding density and compatibility. Also with me is Greg Simmons from Peterson Associates, the traffic engineer. You have each been provided a copy of the Peterson Associates traffic report, and Greg is going to make some very brief remarks regarding traffic.
But you have everybody that's going to speak queue up behind you.
Yes. In addition, Dave Jorgensen with Jorgen and Associates is here this evening. Dave is our civil engineer, and he is available to answer any questions you may have. Dan Norman, who is our Vice President of Real Estate Development, will provide the closing remarks. So, Mr. Mayor, I have spoken less than 10 minutes, and I'm going to sit down. Thank you.
All right, who's next?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Russ from Charlotte, North Carolina. Thank you for your time tonight. I'll try and be brief as well. Just have a quick presentation, and I'll get right into it. Essentially, I just want to go over the facts of what we're looking at with this rezoning application. Currently, the land is zoned I-1, light industrial, heavy commercial, and the permitted uses, I know we've talked about what the existing uses, the existing use is and how we got to there, but what's permitted on there now that that business is closed and what could come at any time are different utility facilities, gasoline service stations, warehousing and wholesale, developments, manufacturing, even bulk petroleum storage facilities with underground storage tanks. It's an intense use for this land, and however it came to be this zoning, that's what it is right now and what that land has to live with until it would be rezoned. Our application, we're talking about down zoning to downtown general, and I know people are talking about how this isn't a down zone, but when you look at what's permitted in I-1 to what's permitted in downtown general, it's definitely a down zone. Downtown general is a less intense zoning classification. It includes single family, 2-family dwellings, 3-family dwellings, and multi-family dwellings, as well as small businesses or a mixed-use development. What we want to talk about is compatibility with the surrounding zoning. The proper consideration for this request really is the compatibility with the surrounding zonings. An analysis of the zoning and permitted uses of the adjacent area is also appropriate and legal to discuss, and subjective and idealistic analysis is neither appropriate nor legal to discuss. I would just want to take 4 quick points on what should be the guiding principles in looking at this rezoning process. And first and foremost is your city 2025 plan. It's right there on the wall in front of you. I'll just go real quick. We will make appropriate infill and revitalization our highest priorities. This rezone is both infill and revitalization. That piece of property has drainage problems. It has street frontage problems, and this zoning will allow appropriate development to come in as infill and revitalize that area. Number 2, we will discourage suburban sprawl. Request does not lead to suburban sprawl, so we feel that meets that goal as well. We will make traditional town form the standard. Multifamily is absolutely a key component of traditional town form. We talk about, as Jeremy's spoken, there are different components to the town form, and one of them, it's not all single family. It's also business, it's also multifamily. Number 4, we will grow a livable transportation network. This development can absolutely grow the transportation system. We'll look at any type of entrances, any type of access through the development. We'll also look at key path connections, which leads me to number 5. We'll assemble an enduring green network. There are different paths and trail networks that this lot is an integral piece where paths can connect through, and that's something that we'll definitely look at. And then goal 6, we will create attainable housing. Student housing does create attainable housing. It's a need. It's one of the different residential needs. Quickly, number 2, planning department. Right from your staff's report, who spent numerous hours working on this, the staff does find that the city's adopted policies and objectives of the City Plan 2025 support a downtown general zoning district on this property. And then number 3, the fact your planning commission, who are appointed and volunteer and reviewed this extensively, approved the rezone request 6-1. And the existing zoning in the area, quickly. All land directly adjacent to this site is zoned RMF 24 or downtown general. And in addition, part of the total property we're looking at is zoned RMF 24. Absolutely. You've seen the zoning map before. Just quickly, there's RMF 24, there's downtown general, RMF 24, and to the north, Main Street Center. So we're just expanding upon what's there. We're not, right now this I-1 is essentially a spot zone, and we're going to go with what's going to be compatible in that area. You've seen an aerial. Sorry, trying to speed up for you. A quick word on density. Obviously, the current MF24 on the property allows 24 units per acre. Downtown general would also allow 24 units per acre. I know that 24 units is the maximum of what could be allowed, but the project we would come forth with is only 17.5 units per acre. And quickly, the factors not permissible, opinion of local residents unless it reflects logical and reasonable concerns. Some are very reasonable, some we've heard tonight, and some aren't, but that's up to you guys. And spot zoning that results in a single parcel being zoned in a manner entirely different from the surrounding area, such as neighborhood conservation, what people have talked about, that would be spot zoning.
Gotta wrap up.
All right. I'll just leave with this one last quick quote. Right from your City 2025 plan from a focus group. I think the chances are really great that we will see higher density come. I don't think that we can stand here and say, okay, your plan is that we wish that wouldn't happen. I think it would be more beneficial to say that's going to happen to some extent. how can we maintain the quality in the midst of a boom? That's the real challenge. With that, I'll just let our traffic engineer make a few comments, and we're
Thank you.
available for any questions.
Y'all have any questions?
I have one.
Sure.
One commenter made the point earlier that as council members, all of us must know the vacancy rates. Does anybody up here know the vacancy rates? I was wondering if, in the course of your market analysis, if you could make a comment to that effect.
We've absolutely looked at the vacancy rates and looked at where the market is, and that kind of ties into our whole study. It's just a piece of the puzzle. We looked at the quality of the housing that's around and the vacancy rates at certain type places, and we wouldn't be here spending all this time and money in front of you all if we didn't know there's an absolute need for what we can provide.
If you don't have a number, could you tell me what a source is where I could do some research to provide a number at the next council meeting?
Let's see, sometimes, yeah, if you want to.
My name's Dan Norman. I'm head of the real estate and development for our company out of Charlotte, and we do extensive market studies, in-house market studies, and we canvass the neighbors, canvass competitors, canvass existing facilities, existing apartment houses. Some of them aren't like ours. Ours is more of a resort-style living that we bring to the students. So we make those adjustments. But our market study shows us our capture rate is because what we have to capture is well within our boundary. It's right. It's not at a maximum or anything. It's right where we need to be.
Would you be able, or would you be willing to publish a summary of your analysis so we could include it in the record for our review?
Never had that asked of me before.
I would just.
Well, now you have.
I would just really appreciate being able to see the data and numbers
we
as
could
you
do
would
that.
crunch them.
I can do that. I don't have a problem with that.
I-
My superiors might, but that's okay. I do it.
Well, if you would, check with them and then coordinate with Sandra, our city clerk.
We'll be
to
happy to
include
do that, or with the city attorney.
Okay, thank you.
Sarah, you had a question.
I have a question in regard to, since we're talking about marketing of your business, and you can stop me if I'm out of line, but is your competitor already in Fayetteville? Do you have a competitor already in Fayetteville? There's another property, the people that own Hill Place.
I dare not say it. Yes, it is. They're one of our competitors,
Yeah.
yes, nationwide.
Okay, so that's what I was asking.
Is there
Any
a
other
question?
questions?
Was there a question?
That was my question.
Oh.
I just want to clarify.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Who else in your group is going to speak?
Thank you. My name is Greg Simmons. I'm with Peters and Associates Engineers. We're the traffic consultants for this project. I think you have a copy of our traffic study. Briefly, I will tell you this. We did a comprehensive traffic study where we took into account the existing traffic, the projected traffic that this facility will generate, as well as the Hill Place traffic, which is projected and is included as a part of our projected traffic volumes, applied those to the access points, which are on Government and 11th Street and on School and, Government and Martin Luther King, and then on 11th and School. And those intersections will continue to operate at acceptable levels of service, with the exception of the northbound and southbound turning movements at Martin Luther King and Government. They are levels of service E and F now. They will continue to be that, but we're talking about a very small number of vehicles. We did look at the analysis to see if traffic signals would be warranted at either of those intersections, and the projected volumes don't indicate that they are. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Do you have a wrap-up person?
I have a wrap-up person. Again, my name is Dan Norman. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This only take 45 minutes, but...
Good.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. Here it comes. He'll probably throw it at me. I did want to, you already clarified me because you asked me about market studies, and so that's, we've gone over that. We do believe in Fayetteville. We've been looking at this market for a long time. We've been working with Mr. Bartholomew for over 3 years now. We've had a couple neighborhood meetings where we showed all of the particulars of our company and all the things that we do. They are three, I want to make it clear, they are three-story buildings. They're not four-story buildings. I heard that earlier. I've also heard a lot of emotion here tonight about students not being appropriate. We do have a peace of mind policies that we have, and it's funny, I heard that from one of the public speakers here earlier, and our peace of mind policies are our behavior, 3 strikes and you're out. Actually, it's about 2.5 strikes, you're gone, meaning mom and dad are responsible for the lease and the residents are told to leave. But the other thing is we strive to regulate all of our amenities. We have basketball, volleyball inside our courtyard, which is in the back of the properties. And it's a real nice area. There's no alcohol out in the grounds allowed.
All right, enough of that.
It's a fact. And I think one of the other things that we have employees that live in each of the buildings that help with monitoring, also with their employees, they're student employees, but they help with communications. And we have a lifestyle that we've created with our students. It's not just apartment living like I've heard before. I think one of the things, we don't come into a neighborhood and that's it. We're a partnership. We're here for the long term. Not only do we develop the property, we have our own construction company that constructs it. We have our own operating company. We don't flip it, as they say in the development world. We don't sell it. We're here for the long term. And we have partnerships with other communities that we're in, with churches, lower income areas. We have wonderful relationships with those folks and a great mentorship program that we have with our students. And, we haven't been next to a national cemetery, I grant you that, but there's all the reason in the world we'd love to have a partnership with these folks on the respect, the cleanup, and whatever that we could do to offer. Because our kids there are good kids. We're a microcosm of our own society. And we'd love to entertain that and to work out a partnership with them. Also, I think in order to make it just a little bit more palatable, I hope, for everybody, we'd be more than willing to put a 25-foot buffer between us and the western edge of the cemetery property with trees, buffer trees and that sort of thing. Work everything out with the city planning staff. And we're not here for a short term. We want to be part of the group. We have a lot of respect for everybody. And that's a wrap, ladies and gentlemen.
Robert.
Yes.
Your comment about the buffer sort of made me recollect that I think as we parted 2 weeks ago, I think maybe Matthew may have made the comment that I think that it sure would be nice if the groups could kind of get together to see if some resolution could be worked out. I think when I read the paper this morning, I think the congressman indicated he was going to do some things, but he also hoped that a resolution between the parties could be worked out. Besides the buffer, the 25-foot buffer zone, is there anything else that you all have talked to the neighborhood or the cemetery group?
Well, we have briefly tonight, and I think besides the buffer, that we have pointed out just tonight, albeit, that there is other property available in smaller pieces next to that touch the National Cemetery on the north, and there's actually more acreage than the piece that Mr. Bartholomew is under contract with us. It's about 11 acres. And we can point that out to them and show them where that is. And it's been mentioned before, there are smaller pieces that they could acquire instead of a big chunk, and which might be more palatable. But we'd also work with them in other ways, and that'd be with our programs and our neighborhood programs. In our keeping the buffer and putting in I'm open to ideas with that and with the city staff. We definitely are.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
You were mentioning students, and do you have non-students that live in your properties?
No.
And if someone is not a student and they want to live in your properties, how does that work?
It's pretty expensive because we rent by the, I mean, it's affordable for students that are looking, but it would be expensive to rent a whole apartment per se. And we do want them to be students at the university. We don't discriminate or anything like that, but it's, no, we don't.
Sure.
Oops.
What did you say? I'm sorry, I didn't understand
Yes, ma'am.
that. So you have apartments with several bedrooms, is that the idea?
Yes, we have-
And so you rent to students in these bedrooms? So if following up Sarah said, if 2 or 3 people came in and just wanted to rent an apartment, they could each rent one, I mean, they could rent the apartment and then divvy it up themselves, is that right?
No, actually, we help match roommates. A lot of times, about 67% of our clientele are female, and we will help match if they don't bring, usually we have 2 and 3 bedroom suites, and they will bring a friend or 2 other friends, and they will room together. But they share a big kitchen, laundry facilities, and dining room and living room, and then they have their own locked bedroom and walk-in closet and bathroom. And they're only responsible for the rent in their own bedroom, not in case somebody leaves.
Matt?
Well, first, it's encouraging, based on the comments and the fear about students, that your other properties are 67% female. I think they're a little bit less inclined to party hard and loud.
That's correct. And they know how to do laundry, which the guys...
Where did you go to college?
Yeah, I know.
I'm not saying they don't have their moments. But that, speaking of partying hard and loud and that being the fear, can you, I know you said that you don't allow alcohol on campus, or not on campus, but...
in the public areas.
Right, and so what other mechanisms and aspects of your model are there in place to check that kind of obtrusive behavior?
Well, part of it is our community assistants, the folks that actually work for us and live in the community. They're their peers. They live in each of the buildings. We ask them to police themselves. Obviously, if it gets to be an issue just like you over any other kind of an issue, if somebody was theft or something like that, we'd be calling the local police or that sort of thing. But otherwise, we have staff on call 24/7. Most of them live right there. Our professional staff's hired locally and live right there, besides our student staff.
Okay.
Yes.
How many similar properties do you guys have in total?
We've got 19 operating right now, 5 finishing construction for this year. We hope to start with Fayetteville and about 10 more this fall.
Everything going pretty smooth with the other ones?
Yes, we've had our challenges, there's no doubt about it, but we've also had some great cleanup efforts and partnerships with universities and with our neighbors.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you. I'm going to bring it back to the council now. So, what do y'all want to do? What comments do we have?
A question for Jeremy.
You bet.
Jeremy, during the public comment, it talked about, it was mentioned, and I remember reading it, that the Planning Commission addressed the RMF 24 zoning, and what was, can you discuss that a little bit? What was that discussion about, and why did it get changed to downtown general recommendation?
The original request was for RMF 24. That's how it came to the Planning Commission. Staff expressed concerns about that particular zoning district because it is only a single-use zoning district. In addition, the development pattern generally associated with our RMF 24 single-use zoning districts is not necessarily one that's desirable. We felt the downtown general zoning district, which is a form-based code, it was only created in the last couple of years. We felt the development pattern that is associated with that, along with the multiple uses that can occur on a property, is something that is much more desirable. In addition, looking at the surrounding zoning districts, which encompass a couple of different master plans. You have the downtown master plan to the north with Main Street Center, you have the Walker Park master plan to the east, which is also downtown general. But then looking at RMF 24, if you just look at the colors on the map, it seemed to make logical sense. But in reality, as you've heard many of the neighbors state, that's not the actual prevailing land use on the property, multifamily. So in looking at that, we felt that continuing that use, or continuing that zoning district boundary was not necessarily appropriate in this case. We felt a transition from the single-family neighborhoods to the very much higher intensity commercial directly to the east along South School and along Martin Luther King to the north. You have distributing companies, you have the co-op facility, which is expanding currently, and many commercial developments. We felt that was a good transition as opposed to a single-family neighborhood. I simply don't think a single-family neighborhood would ever develop adjacent to those types of commercial uses in this area. So we recommended that the applicant look at a different zoning district, and we felt Downtown General was more appropriate.
I have a follow-up. Do we have a zoning in between Downtown General and Neighborhood Conservation? Because the way I understand it, Neighborhood Conservation is single-family homes. And Downtown General, it can be all the way up to, I guess apartments are 24 unit with mixed use. But neighborhood, I'm talking about the form-based. Is there something in between? Can one have a mixed use neighborhood conservation? Is there something in between those two form-based zonings?
There are not. There are 4 zoning districts that we created with the Downtown Master Plan. The Downtown Core, which is the most intense, Main Street Center, which is, I believe, where we sit today or close to it, and a lot of Dixon Street. Downtown General actually encompasses many of the directly surrounding neighborhoods around Dixon Street, and then neighborhood conservation, which is almost entirely single-family or two-family dwellings. The Downtown General really was discussed within that process as encompassing both single-family blocks, but also lower intensity non-residential uses and multifamily uses. So there's nothing that's really in between those two zoning districts.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
We had a discussion about another piece of property, neighborhood conservation, and I thought there was some offices and other things that could be put in neighborhood conservation. Am I wrong?
Perhaps by conditional use permit, but the only uses that are permitted.
But it can be done by conditional use?
I believe so.
Okay, and so it can be duplexes and...
Duplexes are by right. So the primary uses that are allowed in neighborhood conservation are single-family and two-family uses.
Okay. I have one more question. In Downtown General, how high can they go?
Downtown General has a maximum height of 4 stories or 56 feet, whichever is less.
Okay, and what is the general density of Downtown General? Is it about the same as RMF 24?
There's not a maximum density limitation listed in the zoning, and we did that purposefully in our form-based codes because it was really more about the form of the development as opposed to looking at separating land uses and densities.
So there's really no density?
It's really bound by the height you can go and how much the parking you have to provide for those particular land uses. I would say that most of our Downtown General that's existing when we rezone the downtown doesn't approach 24 units per acre. Most of it's probably in the 12 to 18 range if I just had to guess. I'm thinking of the Walkerstone apartments that are just down the street on Mountain. I think that's zoned Downtown General. Several of those properties that are
even going 4 stories?
It depends on the size of the property, really. I don't think that we have many properties in our downtown area that encompass one site that's very large.
Rick.
Referring to the zoning that Charlie's talking about, where does our residential office fall in? I mean, that's still an existing zone that's used, right?
It is. Residential.
And how does it compare with these?
The residential office it's sort of a mixed-use zone.
Right.
It's used primarily for office use. So up and down Joyce Boulevard on the east side of College, that's all residential office for the most part. So dentist offices, doctor's offices, that's usually the zoning that encompasses those types of uses. It does allow for some residential use, and we have I bet, probably 2 or 3 subdivisions within the city that are zoned RO. You have a little bit different standard. It's a higher density than your standard RSF4. It allows single family and 2 family also. I believe it allows multifamily by conditional use, if I'm not mistaken.
It allows what?
I think it allows multifamily by conditional use permit, if I'm not mistaken. And I can double check that right here.
But it doesn't allow any businesses, any commercial, I mean, it's office.
Correct. It does not
It
allow
has
any.
like dance studios, things like that, though, as I recall.
Right, you can, it allows eating places or restaurants by conditional use
That's what I
permit,
thought,
but no retail use of any kind that I'm aware of.
You mean like like a clothing store or something like that?
Correct.
But it does have food, dining. So that's more what I think you were talking about. So we have that zoning, basically. I mean, at least with the conditional use. Sure.
It's not, the way I understand it, may I?
Yes.
Thank you. Is that a form-based, that's what okay.
Next.
Well, I have a few comments to make, but first, I'd like to ask the council that we hold this tonight to vote on it at the next meeting, so we can accumulate some extra data. And I really want to get that info to us, because I see a lot of the comments tonight being made on the basis of hope or fear, and I haven't seen too much reason come forward. And I think that's where we need to be making this decision from, is from a place of reason. And I'm happy that we started to see some of the facts come forward about there being additional purchase options for the veterans that could be pursued, and about what really surrounds this land. I have a friend here tonight who didn't speak, and he's the only person in this room that lives next to this property. On every other side, it's bordered by commercial or industrial, except for the cemetery and his house. And we need to recognize that this is kind of on the border of the Mill District, and it's kind of on the border of the neighborhood. It's not in the middle of the neighborhood, and we need to take steps to protect that neighborhood core, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we develop those thoroughfares in the areas that are next to those industrial and commercial areas, and those thoroughfares, so that we can support things that we want in the future, like light rail and more bicycles and less cars and things like that. And the issue for me here is how to transition from those streets and those busy intersections and those commercial properties into that neighborhood and into that cemetery, and how do we make that transition appropriate. And that's got to be a gradual change. It has to be a gradient. You're not going to go just from commercial, heavy commercial and industrial straight to single family. That doesn't create a pleasant streetscape. It's not a pleasant neighborhood to live in. There are all sorts of reasons that we don't want to do that. And the more I look at this, I just look at this from a place of reason, and I see all the opportunities we have here. We can't get a park with single family and these sorts of things. So I haven't made my decision yet. I'm still worried about traffic and about the market information and things like that. So I'd hope that we could hold off on the decision and not make that tonight.
Brenda.
Well, I respect Matthew's point, and I think there is some information out there that we can possibly ascertain from the applicants here. My concern still, I'm not saying how I'm voting right now, because we're going to hold this off another time, but my concern is that historically we've always tried to have a buffer of zoning between commercial, which that whole strip on South School is now commercial, downtown general, and a neighborhood, or in this case, a cemetery, which makes this a very unique situation. I don't recall us ever dealing with, an adjacent piece of property in question being a cemetery, which certainly does deserve a certain amount of thought and reverence. But so I guess my concern is that downtown general is not a buffer. Historically we would always have commercial, RO zoning, and then residential. And this is not providing a buffer at all. It is just like commercial. Well, with the existing zoning of industrial, which obviously, along with the many other things, as Senator Madison pointed out, the councils in the past have made a lot of concessions for this sale barn being located where it was throughout the years. In fact, I was on the council when we made the setback concession. So we've continued to make concessions to help the Bartholomews, and I appreciate that. I mean, I respect their position. But, you know, I feel like that at some point we really do need to back up and look at what's there and how we want to look at this zoning. And so, anyway, but I think we'll, you know, I certainly will support leaving it on this reading.
Adela?
Well, I'm a little disappointed that we're going to leave it on this reading. I would like to vote this up or down tonight because I feel strongly that we should go right ahead with this zoning. I think we've talked about it, we've researched it, and we've heard lots and lots of comments, and I agree that we have not heard a lot of reason, and that's disappointing. And I hope that, you know, if we do leave it on tonight, which it looks like we will, leave it on this reading, I'm hoping that we will try to think about this with a little more reason. I really like the 25-foot buffer. I think that's a great concession that the developers have made. You know, the thing that I keep thinking about, the Bartholomews have been there 73 years. Maybe we've been real good to them, but they've been good to us as well. Think of the amount of taxes they've paid, both property and sales. And then, at a time when they need us to take a step in their direction, we're, you know, we're not sure we can do that. So, you know, I think that we need to, yes, we respect the veterans. I respect the veterans. Of course I do, and I want them to have what they need for their cemetery. And I'm delighted that there's more property they can buy. But I also respect Mr. Bartholomew and the Bartholomew family and what they've done through the years. And they're a citizen of the city of Fayetteville, and that's who I represent, the citizens of Fayetteville. You know, it's not like Campus Crest ran into town from North Carolina and suddenly made Mr. Bartholomew an offer. They've been working together for 3 years, and he's been encouraging the veterans to make him an offer for much longer than 3 years. And it just seems to me that it's a little unreasonable at this point in time that all of a sudden, when he has a buyer, then the veterans are going to try to come up with $2 million. So far as Representative Bozeman's earmarks, I think if you will read carefully that article, you will see that he's not promised anything because he knows this administration is not strong on earmarks. Representative Bozeman is not strong on earmarks. So I think that it's unreasonable for the veterans to think they're going to get a big earmark from the federal government. Look at the number of veterans. It's growing and growing. Lots of places for our veteran dollars to go. And I'm not sure that we're going to be able to get any of it in the city of Fayetteville. I do hope that we will try to be reasonable and think about what we are looking at. We're looking at a citizen of Fayetteville who's been a good citizen. And we need to show him some respect as well. Thank you.
Sure. Matthew's next and then Shirley.
I just had one final thing to say, and I wanted to address specifically a comment by Mr. Jim Buckner. He said that students would be the worst possible neighbors and their presence would be desecrating that holy ground. And I have to say, Mr. Buckner, that that offends me a bit, being a young person, and it's not that I have a lack of respect for veterans. I say the Pledge of Allegiance every meeting here with solemnity and with pride, but I think that if you think young people are really the worst thing that could happen here, then you need to reconsider what makes you proud of your country.
Can I say something?
That's enough. Sure.
We've had a lot of emotion here tonight. Excuse me. But we've got to remember that this is a rezoning. And I agree with Brenda. We've got to represent all the citizens. I respect Mr. Bartholomew and what he's done, but I also respect that neighborhood down there that have lived there for longer than the sale barn. Their homes have been there. So I want to, the things that concern me about this rezoning is the traffic, for one thing. Even the police stated it will create an appreciable or undesirable increase in the load to service, traffic, danger, and congestion. This is not on a main thoroughfare. Now, we have commercial on School Street, but this piece of property is not on the main thoroughfare, and you have small streets. And I understand one of the things that we have in Ward 4 is people cutting through neighborhoods. And I anticipate that in order to get to the university, the students are going to be cutting through this neighborhood to get to Hill Street where the stoplight is, because turning left on Government is not going to, onto Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard is not going to be easy. So these are things we have to consider when we consider the rezoning, to me. I agree that this is not a buffer. Downtown General is not compatible with this neighborhood, it doesn't seem to me. I have a hard struggle with, we don't want, the recommendation was not for RMF 24, but yet this is RMF 24, but with form-based design. So we still have the density. When we look at density and the 2025 plan, I don't think it means for us to invade established neighborhoods. That concerns me. I live in an established neighborhood, and I've been there a long time, and I understand that a neighborhood, I treasure a neighborhood that has survived, and I don't want us to do something with a rezoning that invades, that's going to invade and cause traffic congestion, traffic dangers in this neighborhood. We have a nice, affordable neighborhood, good neighborhood, and I think we need to consider that too. I want us to look at it as a rezoning and think seriously about this. Neighborhood conservation, it seems like Downtown General on School Street, neighborhood conservation, and then our neighborhood. Seems more logical to me, but I just want us to remember it's a rezoning. And the thing about it is once it's rezoned, people. And that kind of bothers me too. I mean, we've got to really be careful here, especially in this area that's starting to revitalize, and we've got to help them do that. Thank you.
Bobby?
Mayor, could I ask the applicant a question?
You sure can.
I too am about ready to vote, but I would just like to ask, in the spirit of the council wanting to wait a week, is that going to cause you all a hardship to wait another go around? See if there could be some accommodation of some type or whatever.
Well, every day is a day gone by, and it just pushes our end date doesn't change, which is the beginning of school. My construction guys can perform miracles, and they have, but it just pushes us out further. And we definitely believe in this project.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, Mayor?
Yes.
You know, out of respect to Matthew, I again, was willing to not make a motion to go ahead and go to the next reading, but which I'll do in just a minute. I want to preface it. I feel like, from what I'm hearing, I think most of our minds are made up. I don't know if the information you're asking for is going to make that much difference, and I certainly sympathize with the owner and developer, and also I sympathize with all these people that have been very patient sitting in those hard chairs out there. So I will move that we go to the
Mr. Mayor, could I make a comment right
Yes.
before you make that motion? Would that be?
Sure.
All right, Brenda.
Just go right ahead.
I want you to understand that the mayor was absolutely correct when he informed the public that they were not supposed to talk about the project, that they only could talk about zoning. And then, but then when the public comment was closed, of course, the applicant came up and described his project. And he made certain statements like, well, we're going to have a buffer zone, our buildings will not be higher than 3 stories. You cannot consider that. The only way something like that could be true is if a bill of assurance had been offered by the applicant to encourage you to vote for the rezoning. So those words mean nothing. And so don't think that the developer has conceded anything, Alderman Gray, because the developer has not. And we have seen that in the past. And if it's not in a bill of assurance, it means nothing. 2, that cannot be enforced. So that if you want to give the developer time to do something like that, and maybe to meet with some of the other groups, so that they could actually present something that would be enforceable, then you wouldn't want to do it tonight, because tonight you're getting, you would be getting nothing except for where it'd be rezoned, and that would be it. I just want to make sure you understood that. And the second thing, obviously, is you also should not make the decision on who you want to own the property. That's certainly not for us to decide. We might want it to be a cemetery, but that's not the issue. The issue is only the zoning. And so you should, even though I'm a veteran and I have my father-in-law and brother-in-law in that cemetery, it's not who you want to own that cemetery. It's what's the best use of this property, and is it compatible with the neighborhood.
Thank you, Kip.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question?
Not unless you've been asked up here again.
I'd like to hear what he
All
has to say.
Okay.
Would you like to ask me a question?
Ask him a
What's your
question.
question?
Would you be willing to offer a bill of assurance?
Yes, I would.
The alderman, we cannot request a bill of assurance. It must be freely offered and voluntarily offered. Mr. Estes, who represents these individuals, was chairman of the planning commission, very well knows what bill of assurances are, and that there's a form in the planning department that can be filled out and submitted. So it's not like they don't know the procedure on how to offer a bill of assurance.
So I'm not allowed to ask if they're thinking about offering a bill of assurance, or if that's in their plans?
You cannot ask them to give a bill of assurance.
But I can ask them if they're planning to give one.
I would recommend that you do not do that.
But since I'm up here, can I offer a bill of assurance?
Your attorney knows how to offer. Oh, go ahead.
Just hang on, everybody. This thing has got crazy here tonight. I personally think we need to wait a couple of weeks, because I think that everybody needs to come back in 2 weeks with whatever information y'all want. But if y'all want to vote on it, I'm going to leave it up to you.
We have no chance of a resolution between these groups if we vote tonight.
So,
Resolution anyway.
now, I think there's been a lot of emotion here tonight, and I agree. And y'all forgive me if I haven't done as good a job of running the meeting as I can, but it's been kind of hard to handle tonight, some of it.
Well, since the owner said that they wanted us to vote tonight, are they now saying they would rather us wait so that in the interim they could
I don't know,
consider
ask him
some
that
options?
question, and we'll bring him back to the podium.
I mean, are you,
Just ask him.
so are you saying that you would like for us to wait 2 weeks?
Yes.
Okay.
Sarah?
I guess I would like to repeat that this is about a rezoning, and it doesn't matter who even is offering to purchase the property, or who, which members of the public would like to offer something. It's zoning is on the table, and the idea is that we have to focus on if that zoning is compatible with the surrounding land use. Not if it's compatible with the existing land use, but on that site, but around it, if that zoning fits what is around it. and taking into consideration the way those small single-family homes are zoned, taking into consideration the way it's zoned along School and Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, taking into consideration all of that land use. And I think it's really important to be careful to not get our vision blurred by who is presenting different stories. And I am impressed with the turnout, and I really respect the people who put in effort to come here and speak up. And I think we as a council must remember that we are considering a zoning and the type of land use that will be in that site. And are we even able to make that decision with the type of zoning that's currently in that area? So I just want to summarize.
All right. Here's what I'd like to do. If an alderman feels like that they want to table, or they want to go to the third reading, let them make a motion, and if they get a second, then we can vote it up, or we can vote it down, or we're going to be sitting here thrashing around on this all night. So does anybody want to vote on this tonight and make some sort of motion to vote? Go to the third and final reading.
I'd like to vote to go to third and final reading and table it for 2 weeks. Kill two with one stone.
Well, we might as well just leave it where it is, Bobby, then.
Okay, that's all right.
Is there a motion to go to the third and final reading? Okay, well, that settles it. Hang on. I thank everybody for your patience tonight. We will be back in 2 weeks, and I want to give a word of caution. I thank you for pointing that out, Kit. The next time you give a presentation in 2 weeks, you can't talk about the project. You need to stay with the rezoning as well, okay? So, thank you.
Would you also give that warning to everybody in the audience? Because to be very pragmatic, we heard most of the comments were not necessarily about the zoning.
Okay.
And
all right.
I think it's fair is fair.
I think so too. And as I said before we started, that you got to stay, folks, you got to stay with the rezoning, not the project, please. Okay? All right. So, with that, we're going to table and we'll move on to the next item. Thank you.
We're just leaving it on this.
We're leaving it on the second reading. All right, thank y'all. All right, y'all gonna take a break.
Let's take a little break.
Okay.
got a quorum. So there's some things on.
Now we got a quorum.
But
I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting back to order. The next thing on the agenda that we have is the Box Avenue appeal. Jeremy, you had something on that?
The applicant has requested this item be tabled indefinitely without discussion this evening.
Make a motion to table indefinitely.
We have a motion and a second to table indefinitely. Is there any comments from the public on this? See none, bring it back to the council. Sandra, would you call the roll?
Petty,
Yes. Yes.
Rhodes,
Yes.
Farrell,
For table.
Yes.
Lucas. Yes. Lewis. Here. Is that a yes or a
yes.
no?
Yeah, what am I voting?
Table,
Yes.
table box.
Yes.
On their request.
Ray,
Yes.
Teal, Took.
Yes.
Okay. Moving to new business. Number one, light rail transit system, resolution to support an alternatives analysis study to determine the feasibility of a light rail transit system in northwest Arkansas.
Yes. Good evening, Council and Mayor. Strategic Planning Staff is recommending approval of a resolution to support an alternatives analysis study to determine the feasibility of a light rail transit system in northwest Arkansas. And I should mention that Alderman Rhodes is sponsoring this resolution as well, so if you have anything to add after my staff report, feel free, because we work together on this. Northwest Arkansas has had 2 studies done now that all recommend having a feasibility study done for rail transit. The first was conducted by Beta Rubicon in 2005, and the second was the University of Arkansas's Community Design Center study, which corroborated Beta Rubicon's findings in its 2007 study. And the CDC study went further than the pre-feasibility study in its arguments, suggesting that light rail would significantly benefit the region economically and environmentally, and that the region was competitive with other areas that were requesting federal funds for a rail transit system. And the first step to attaining the New Starts dollars, which funds mass transit programs, is to conduct an alternatives analysis study. And this study evaluates the costs, benefits, and impacts of any long-range transportation alternative and provides a recommendation for the best investment strategy. So it looks at all the alternatives for dealing with your transportation problems. These studies typically cost between $1.5 and $2.5 million because there are only a few consultants across the country that conduct the studies. But they can be funded through a federal transportation earmark. Light rail transit received the greatest number of public votes during the public comment sessions held before the adoption of the 2030 Regional Transportation Plan. And as a result, the Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission has requested an earmark for an alternatives analysis study 3 times, but has not received the earmark. This issue resurfaced during the Fayetteville Forward Economic Development Summit in the Transportation Action Group, and that group recommended that the city of Fayetteville aggressively advocate for a light rail system at federal level, at the local level. And this was one of the priorities to emerge from the city council after the council voted on all the actions recommended by those groups. So this resolution directs the mayor to support the efforts of the Regional Planning Commission in obtaining the alternatives analysis earmark by lobbying Northwest Arkansas's federal representatives, regional bodies, and municipalities. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
What comments or questions do we have? Brenda?
Well, I guess my only concern, I mean, I certainly want us to advocate for all of this, but, I mean, is this going to come back, I mean, if we ask for the Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission, I mean, are we asking them to help fund this? And if so, are they going, no? Are they going to, I mean, ask us to help fund this too?
I'm on that committee.
And so are we going to be asked to be
I can
funded?
ask for them to fund it.
I guess my question is, by us advocating this, are we in putting ourselves in a position of being, you know, needing to help fund this study ourselves, the city?
Mayor, may I?
Just a minute. Sarah, you were next. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to respond to that because I had
Thank you.
conversations with them. the executive director of the Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission. When these earmarks are allotted, and the earmark for the alternatives analysis study is very similar in its cost structure in that it's an 80-20 match. So the local area has to provide a 20% match, but that can be provided by the local municipalities, it can be provided by the State Department of Transportation, or it can be provided as part of a state legislative act. So most recently, we received an earmark to fund a Western Bypass feasibility study. That was an 80-20 match, and there was an act that passed the state legislature to fund that 20%. So there are multiple ways to fund it. I don't think it's locking the city of Fayetteville into any sort of match in the future.
That was my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Mayor?
Yes,
If I might add, in part of preparation with Alderman Rhodes submitting this to staff to move forward to the council, and one, we want to thank you for doing that. We had a dialogue trying to look at other communities and other regional areas that might have begun this discussion and when that took place. And so we contacted the city of Dallas and the city manager there to ask the question, when did they begin their discussions in light rail? And the feedback that we got was when their MSA, or Metropolitan Service Area, reached about 500,000, which we have the opportunity to hit through this census period. And that's the other reason that we think it's appropriate and important to begin the discussion today. We also think that a lot of the preliminary discussion with other cities, that it's going to take Fayetteville pushing this issue because it was a very important item in the Fayetteville Forward Summit. Many citizens commute north to work at some of our larger employers in the region. And also we believe that most of the other local communities are advocating bypass and road money, and so we want to, as a part of having the entire region represented in transportation issues, advocate that. So we need to keep asking. We think it's important to have a resolution that the council supports for backing for the Planning Commission to utilize, and we think it's time appropriate based on current population estimates.
Thank you.
Sarah.
I would like to add to that and just tell that the mayor appointed me to the Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning, and I know Kyle goes there, and as well as Jeremy. And at the last meeting, they shared the budget, and the budget was entirely roads. And so the next thing on the agenda was requesting that we approve them applying for this funding for an alternative analysis. Again, so they've applied for the same thing 3 times. And I think we should apply again, but I also hope that we're going to be doing other things besides beating the same horse, essentially. And I think this is really important. I also know that our regional planning community really needs to be considering this as a real transportation alternative, not something you just keep applying for and continue with the same checkbook system that we keep using. And the reality is we're going to be spending money on roads. The reality is we keep requesting funding for alternative transportation. So I'm so glad that that Fayetteville is bringing this to the table, and I hope that there will also be other efforts to really be lobbying essentially the other communities, because we may be the only one talking about this at this point. And I really am excited that Karen and Robert, you worked on this. So that's what happened last meeting. So thank you.
Mayor, several years ago, I heard Dr. Goforth give a presentation on this, and one of the key things he talked about was that it's never too soon to make the application, because he said 25 years is probably the norm on a deal like this. Bay Area Rapid Transit, they'd requested it for years and years. So I think by starting it and keeping it going, keeping our name in the hopper is a good deal. And with that, I would move approval of the resolution.
Second.
I want to say something real quick, and that's, I think it's all been mentioned, but that's the thing is, You know, it is, I hadn't heard 25 years, but I was thinking 20. I mean, it's a 25-year
About
process.
5 years ago, I heard that, so
Yeah.
you might be right.
And we always talk about what the population's gonna be like in this area, these 2 counties, 4 counties, whatever, in 25 years. And we're 500,000 right now. I mean, I don't know how long it took Dallas to get to that point, but we're crazy not to do that. I mean, but, you know, we talk about the Western Beltway, we have no problem finding funding for that study, which is crazy to me. Every municipality up here would be insane to support that Western Beltway.
Yeah.
Because it's gonna pull development out there. We're gonna lose development within our cities. Do we have a problem with 540? Yes. To me, light rail ultimately is the answer to that, but it's a very long process and very expensive process, but we'd be crazy not to do it.
Yeah, I think there's some things that you just, I think, can't do quick enough, and I think this is probably one of them. And for those of you that are a lot younger than I am, you'll see the fruits of this labor. Been a second.
You know, I want to make just a couple of comments on that. I know I'm part of the Northwest Arkansas Transportation Committee. I know one of the things that I had brought forward, we've talked about with some of the members, is light rail and public transportation and bike lanes and just all in general alternative transportation. Times it's a little difficult for some folks to understand where we are with this, but I do push, I do ask, and it will be the wave of the future. Because I think in the not too distant future, we are going to see $5 a gallon gas. And then you're going to be glad that you put in all the bike lanes and got all the public transportation and started on a light rail system. And we will be on the cutting edge of that, and I want us on the cutting edge of that. It's important not only for this city, but the whole region. And I appreciate, Robert, I appreciate your effort, Karen, your efforts on this, Don, on this, because it's so vitally important to this city and the region as a whole. So, does anybody else got any other comments?
I would also just like to add that I hope that, and I know that there are other efforts to bring forward even more in efforts to find more funding. I think keep
Right.
this going. This isn't the end of the story.
And just stay after it.
Yeah.
Just stay after it.
Thank you.
Well, if there's not any other comments on this, anyone in the public want to address us on this?
Mr. Mayor, council members, as you know, my name is Bob Estes, and I reside at 668 North Milligan in Ward 4. I would encourage you to vote for the resolution. Mayor Jordan and I have had this matter under discussion for quite some time. We've had a discussion of forming a task force from each of our sister municipalities to try to get some cohesion and some togetherness. But this is the first step. This needs to be done, and I encourage you to vote for the resolution.
Thank you, Bob. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. If there's not any other comments, shall the resolution pass?
Petty?
Yes.
Rhodes?
Yes.
Farrell?
Yes.
Lucas?
Yes.
Lewis?
Yes.
Ray?
Yes.
Teal?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
It's been one of those evenings. Number 2, ADM 09-3307, Sustainable Yards. An ordinance to amend 95.10 unsightly or unsanitary conditions on real property, order and notice to correct of the federal code to encourage properly maintained and manage naturalistic landscapes. Kit?
Whereas the Alderman Ordinance Review Committee has unanimously recommended approval of this amendment of Section 9501 based upon staff suggestions, and whereas the City Council desires to allow its citizens to create properly maintained and managed naturalistic landscapes. Now therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas, Section 1, that the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas hereby amends Section 9501, unsightly or unsanitary conditions on real property, order and notice to correct, by replacing the word shall with the word may in the second sentence of subsection A. Section 2, that the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas hereby amends Section 9501, unsightly or unsanitary conditions on real property, order and notice to correct, by enacting a new subsection C as follows. Subsection C, the mayor is authorized to establish comprehensive procedures to administer this section and to determine when corrective actions by a landowner are necessary. The mayor may consider how the land is being used, agricultural, parkland, woodlands, residential, commercial, institutional, or industrial, and whether the owner desires to maintain and manage a naturalistic and sustainable landscape when determining whether a landowner must take corrective action.
Karen?
Yes. Multiple articles have been written in national magazines addressing this issue of sustainable yards or naturalistic landscapes, and they've been citing the benefits of using less chemicals and less water than conventional yards. And over the past several years, we've received a number of requests from property owners to be exceptions to our code compliance ordinances that require certain mowing and weed treatments. And these naturalistic landscapes are in line with the city's overall goal of sustainability. They reduce maintenance, conserve water, soil, and the ecosystem, and they often eliminate the need for pesticides and fertilizers. And strategic planning staff has worked with multiple departments across the city to craft a protocol that could be implemented when a property owner says that they are cultivating a sustainable yard or naturalistic landscape. And that protocol, the draft protocol, has been outlined in this report. But this ordinance is simply giving staff the authority to provide those exceptions and allow property owners to not have to comply with our mowing and weed treatments and encourage that cultivating of the sustainable yard and naturalistic landscapes. This ordinance was discussed by the Ordinance Review Committee on June 10th, 2009, and there were two requests. City Council Member Lewis requested that the word manage be added to Section C so that the ordinance reads as whether the owner desires to maintain and manage a naturalistic and sustainable landscape. And our city attorney also advised that Section A be changed to read as the mayor or his duly authorized representative may give the owner of the property written notice rather than shall give the owner, so that the mayor is not required to give written notice of the violation by City Council. And the Ordinance Review Committee voted to forward the ordinance with these changes by a vote of 3-0. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Mayor, I got a question. I was reading this, and while you were talking, and you may have just hit it. It says the mayor is authorized to establish comprehensive procedures to administer this section, and it says the mayor may consider how the land is being used. Did you put something in there to say, or his designee, like the code enforcement, or I was just, usually the mayor doesn't, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. I think that actually goes without saying, that the mayor works through his various
Staff.
officials, whether it be the police or the fire or the other staff.
And I can assure you, Bobby, if anything goes wrong, they'll be calling the office.
Yeah, the buck does stop down
Yeah,
there.
boy.
though.
I understand.
Last 2 or 3 days, we've certainly found that to be true. Okay. Anything else?
Just
Now,
a quick comment. I wanted to thank Karen because this spring we replanted my front yard as a garden, and I can't tell you how many neighbors I've had come by and thank us for the work we've done on our yard and for how beautiful it looks. And I just wanted to thank Karen. I didn't have anything to do with bringing this forward, but thank you if we vote this in for making my yard legal. I appreciate it.
Mayor,
Yes.
can I just say that this has actually been discussed for quite some time. The Environmental Concerns Committee looked at this with John Coleman, and really it was difficult to really come up with a way to deal with this issue. And I think between Kit and Karen and some of the staff, you know, we finally figured out a way that hopefully this will work. And because it is still kind of subjective, and you know, we're doing something here to deal with really a very few situations that get complained about. And I think one of the key things that the Environmental Concerns Committee felt like needed to be in was that it was maintained and managed. It was not just a yard, and I'm telling the public, this does not allow you to just go out there and let your weeds grow up. That's not what this is about. This is about, something that's xeriscaping or however you want to do it, but in a way, if you want to use natural, local, native plants, that's fine, but it does have to show maintenance, and otherwise, I think that's going to be the crux here with making this work. But anyway, I'm certainly glad it's finally moved forward because some of the problems that occur on Mount Sequoia in Ward 1, and so maybe this will get everyone happy. Anyway, do we need to
I
move?
need to take some public comment.
Okay.
Anybody else want to comment before I take public comment? Anyone from the public like to address us on this? Seeing none, I will bring it back to the council now.
Well, I'd move to go to the second.
Public comment.
Okay.
It's a resolution. Oh, it is an ordinance.
Yeah, fooled me too. I was fixing to zip it right on through.
No, it's an ordinance.
We have a motion to go to the second reading. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Let's vote on that.
Sure.
Then. Go ahead.
Petty,
Yes.
Rhodes.
Yes.
Farrell.
Yes.
Lucas.
Yes.
Lewis.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Teal.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
An ordinance to amend Section 9501, unsightly or unsanitary conditions on real property, order and notice to correct, of the Fayetteville Code to encourage properly maintained and managed naturalistic landscapes.
Yeah, sir.
Just to comment that this is in the spirit, the true spirit of being sustainable. The idea is you're using ecosystem services, you save money. And so it benefits not only your wallet, but also the ecosystem. So.
Okay. Any other comments? I'll entertain a motion to go to third and final reading.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to go to third and final reading. Sonia, would you call the roll?
Petty.
Yes.
Rhodes.
Yes.
Farrell.
Yes.
Lucas.
Yes.
Lewis.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Teal.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
An ordinance to amend Section 95.01, unsightly or unsanitary conditions on real property, order and notice to correct, of the Fayetteville Code to encourage properly maintained and managed naturalistic landscapes.
Okay. Any other comments from the council? Time to call the roll.
Petty.
Yes.
Rhodes.
Yes.
Farrell.
Yes.
Lucas.
Yes.
Lewis.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Teal.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Okay, moving along to number 3, National Cemetery Neighborhood Area Study. Resolution to request that the city planning study the National Cemetery Neighborhood Area of South Fayetteville to propose a master plan. Sarah?
Yes, City Council Member Teal and I have brought this forward, and I would actually like to propose an amendment to this before we discuss it thoroughly. I would like to propose that it be restated as a resolution to request that the city planning consider the National Cemetery Neighborhood Area of South Fayetteville as a candidate for master planning. The reason for the amendment, okay, is to give the city staff a chance to consider funding and also consider other areas of town, but also, but to keep this in consideration for this type of planning. So I wanted to change that.
What other discussion do we have in the council on this?
Is there a second to that?
I do.
Yes.
Second, okay.
Yes.
Kid, this is a procedural question. If this is a friendly amendment, do we have to vote on it?
I think it'd be better to go ahead and vote on it, yeah.
As opposed to an unfriendly one?
A friendly amendment is proposed by the original proposers of the resolution.
All right, do we have any public comment on the amendment? Yes. Now, this is just on the amendment. Okay.
I wanted to come forward and give my support to that. Oh, to the amendment. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We're still on the amendment.
Yeah, once it
Sorry.
gets amended, then you probably want to come back up. Okay. All right, I'm going to bring it back to the council. Any other discussion on the amendment from the council? Sean? All right, Bob.
I think Sarah answered it for me a while ago, but I didn't get it. We didn't have much time. Since this is amended to be considered, this is something that would be considered after the disposition of the cemetery agenda item that we're dealing with right now, coming up at our next meeting. Is that correct?
Well, if we consider it at any time, obviously, if you have just rezoned a piece of property, if that's what happens here, then that would be already a statement of the city council what they want to do. But it doesn't,
Well, I guess I
this
asked a
doesn't have a
question
time
wrong.
delay on it.
Yeah, okay, I guess I asked the question the wrong way. Does the staff think that a decision will be made on this before the next meeting, voting meeting?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Now can we vote on the amendment? Okay. Sandra, would you call the roll?
Petty,
Yes.
Rhodes.
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes.
Lucas.
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Teal,
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Okey dokey. Now let's talk about the amended resolution. Or not. People have been talking all night, now I can't get anybody to talk. Sarah.
Okay.
Seems to want,
I
want to hear from the public. They
The
seem-
reason, right, well, I'll make a comment and then, the purpose of this, the intent of this is, I guess, did come up as a result of the discussions being had about the rezoning of that property, and it became evident that the entire area around there needs to be considered for long-term planning for the whole area, not just the property we've been discussing, the whole area that is very close to very recent neighborhood planning activity, and so that's the intent of this is to make it known and make the city council stating that we recognize that that area may need to be considered for master planning, and because of the development pressure in the area, because of some inaccurate zoning as opposed in relationship to the existing land use and the zoning, the differences in some of those areas is single-family homes, and they're zoned RMF 24, for example. So that was the intent of it. It looks like an area that's highly contentious and needs some attention. So,
Brenda.
Well, I'll just add a little bit to that. I mean, you've said everything I would say, but actually, whenever the staff wanted to do Fayette Junction, I really had preferred that they had done this and had recommended that as being the next study. But there were obvious reasons, I guess, for doing the Fayette Junction. Because this neighborhood, just like the Walker Park neighborhood, are subject right now to a lot of developers because they are adjacent to the downtown master plan. They're very affordable. It's very affordable property still. So, we recognize that these areas are going to be bought up and developed rapidly, and more rapidly than other parts of town. So I think it's really very critical that we try to deal with this in one fashion or another, because it's obviously not appropriately zoned, the same way that the Walker Park neighborhood was not zoned properly. The way that South Mount Sequoia is still not properly zoned, although actually a constituent worked on her own and got a section of that rezoned through a neighborhood petition. But, for some reason our city fathers thought that everything, south could just be multifamily, put it there. And so, anyway, it's caused problems. And so I certainly support Sarah's, who actually initiated this, and I would encourage staff to consider this as an early priority. I know it takes a year or so to get one of these things all through, and I know it costs staff time and money, but anyway.
It's only money.
Only money.
I want to ask a question here. If we pass this tonight, what kind of effect will it have any effect? Is that what you asked, Bobby?
That's basically what I was asking.
Is it going to have an effect on the previous rezoning on the sale?
I don't think it has any legal effect. This is a request for the planning staff to consider looking at this area for a master planning, whether or not the zoning that is before the council is successful or not. So I don't think it necessarily has any effect.
So this is just sort of what we would call a kind of a broad brush, and then this other thing would be a section, whether we want to use it in the study or change the rezoning. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think that it's, this is simply a request for the planning staff to look at this area because it's come to light, obviously, that there are zoning problems down there.
I just wanted to get that clear in my head.
Mayor, if, just to give the council an update on kind of staff's thinking about our master planning process. I know that Karen had some dialogue with council members Lewis and Teal and Gray about the request, and the timing and preparation for notice, the length of time to actually conduct the charrettes, and it's about a 9-month process to do it from the time that you start, if we use Fayette Junction's process as an example. In 2010, we are looking at updating the 2025 plan, the Master Street plan, and the land use plans for the city, and that will be late in 2010 because of the Census Bureau data that we'll need to do that. So our first budgeted new neighborhood study area was not scheduled until the 2012 budget cycle. And so I'm saying that because I don't want citizens who may be in this area who know there's a very active rezoning taking place today to think that it will happen in the next 90 days. It's not because we wouldn't have liked for it to, but in light of a current $2 million budget shortfall, our current plans, and our need to do our 2025 plan, which drives many funding areas for other items of the city, it will take priority as the next charrette process or planning process update. But it will go onto our list, and I think there's a couple out in the Ward 3 area that have been talked about, one in maybe Ward 2, that we'll evaluate together. And if we can get more of them done or find extra money or sales tax recover, so go out and buy stuff, we'll be able to do one more quickly.
Okay. Shirley.
I look at this as asking the council to set this as a priority. I think this came to light actually with the Hill Street development, that this was all zoned wrong.
Right.
And I know Brenda had talked about doing this first before the Fayette Junction, because that was one of the things that Hill Place development, Aspen Ridge, whatever it is, brought all this to light. And it amazes me how everything was zoned just no matter what's there. That just, I don't know how those things happen.
Yeah. And staff would comprehend your setting of this priority because, to my knowledge, it would be the only area where we have a resolution directing us to work at it.
Thank
you. At this point.
Matthew.
Number one.
With that in mind, what are the other areas that are being considered for the 2012 process?
No other areas are under consideration. Probably not until we do the City Plan 2025 update, I think, which would probably inform that decision as well.
Okay.
Okay. Now we're going to hear from the public. Now remember, everybody gets one turn at the microphone, and we don't have to worry about the rules on the rezoning on this. And so you can talk about this, and who will be first?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Bob Estes. As I stand here before you for the third time this evening, I now represent Campus Crest. The proposed resolution is not appropriate and should receive a do not pass, and there are 3 reasons for that. The first reason is that 2 neighborhood studies have been done in Ward 1 recently, the Walker Park study and the Fayette Junction study, both resulting in master plans. The second reason is that your planning staff and your planning department has the next neighborhood study scheduled for the year 2012. The third reason is that your planning department has specific criteria to determine the appropriateness of a neighborhood study. They look at budget, they look at appropriateness, and they look at priorities. You have mandated that your staff determine the appropriateness of a neighborhood study. What you are doing by this resolution is directing their attention to one specific ward. Let me say this to you, that I would nominate Ward 4 as the appropriate ward for a neighborhood study. If we look at Ward 4, we find that for the most part it's bordered on the north by Clabber Creek, it's bordered on the south by Owl Creek. A greater portion of the ward is within the U.S. Corps of Engineers jurisdiction. Our master street plan requires or mandates that Rupel Road be extended from Weddington to 6th Street. The greater part of the land mass that has been annexed into our city within the past 10 years has been in Ward 4. We have a tremendous opportunity before us at this time to do a neighborhood study of Ward 4 and to develop a master plan. In terms of land use and planning, it is Ward 4 that is in priority need of a neighborhood study, not Ward 1, which recently has received 2 studies resulting in 2 master plans.
Yep, I know what you're going to say. Go ahead.
Well, no, I have a question. I thought you just said that there is not a neighborhood study targeted for 2012. There is a citywide study.
The citywide study is targeted for the end of 2010 and 2011. Our next budgeted staff time and dollars amount and publications for charrettes are scheduled out for 2012 for the strategic planning division.
Right, but you
We've
don't
not
have a
identified
specific
an
location.
We have not.
And that's what I thought you just said. There's no
location.
specific location. And I should not respond. I should let the rest of the public, and then I'll respond. I'm sorry. I just wanted to question that.
Okay.
Then I'll respond.
When I spoke earlier about Ward 3 or Ward 2, it's various locations that some of you through various discussions have said, what about this area? It's not been a formal request or it's not been a boundary identified. It's just other locations that have come up.
Right.
Including Ward 4, I guess, because both aldermen have talked about it.
I had the same question in mind when you asked that when I heard that too.
Okay.
Could I
Sure.
answer that?
Yeah.
Thank you. You're right. I have talked about Ward 4 and the annexation, and I thought this would be an excellent opportunity for us to plan it out. But you have a lot of people out there that are concerned about their farms and everything, and so I don't know how that would work, but I have brought it up about an excellent opportunity to plan our development, and I think Karen has talked about it too, that when we talked about, and Jeremy, and when we talked about the annexation, we talked about, it's idealistic, but I guess it could be done, I don't know. But the reason I am in support of this for this area is because it is an older section that is definitely zoned wrong. Mm-hmm. And so when we find ourselves with a mistake or something that's not appropriate with what's there, we need to address it as soon as we can, I think.
Who else from the public would like to address us?
Yes, my name is Melba Smith, and I've not been party to the discussions, but I was just looking at the piece of paper and noticing the comments that were made by the people who were here earlier, and most of them refer to their neighborhood as town branch neighborhood area study, and this is National Cemetery, so I don't think it's reflective of how the people identify their community.
Thank you. Who else from the public?
I'll amend it.
I do think our neighborhood needs to be considered because I think that we are being encroached on by lots of developers. There is more affordable land down there, maybe not all of it. There is already a big development that went in a few blocks away, and the fact that Walker Park and Fayette Junction did have their charrettes is the reason why we need ours, because our little area is sandwiched in between those two, and we were left out. So now we have nothing, and they have something, and so what about us? I think this is a very pressing issue. I think it's an emergency issue. Please help our neighborhood.
Thank you. Who else?
I'd just like to second what Kathy had said. I see this as an opportunity for the city to maybe address an oversight in not including our area in the 2 charrettes that have already taken place. When I learned of the Walker Park charrette, I called and volunteered to participate and found that my neighborhood's not included. And when I learned of the Fayette Junction charrette, I called and volunteered to participate and learned that my neighborhood is not included. I really think that this is needed, as Ms. Lucas has said. Clearly there's something amiss with the zoning. I think we all learned more about that tonight in terms of the presentations. I wish I could point to a row of attorneys to speak on our behalf, but I also fear that the cow might have left the barn before this happens. But I really hope that this can go forward. I really feel like our neighborhood is an older one that is being sandwiched and needs some attention.
Thank you. Who else?
Hi, I'm Cynthia Christie Pevin again. I want you to please do this as soon as possible. I've been asking previously for this to happen. It's something that is long overdue. It may be, as Michelle said, too late because the pressure of development has already moved into this area. This is an old neighborhood of town. It's an affordable neighborhood of town. It's an extremely mixed-use neighborhood with agriculture, industrial, education, all types of different small pockets of grandfathered in areas in there. The whole area was not zoned. It existed before zoning happened in that area, and so when the city of Fayetteville came into zone, they just laid out R24 over the whole thing, thinking, oh, eventually all these houses will be torn down and it'll be apartments or whatever, you know. It needs to be more specific than that. That zoning absolutely does not fit the usage of the area, and so I would like for y'all to look at it in a timely, reasonable, rational, you know, considered manner and get a really effective master plan in place down there. Thanks.
Thank you. Who else?
I support neighborhood conservation only because I've heard nobody propose residential
Introduce yourself,
1
Aubrey.
acre. I'm sorry, Aubrey Shepherd. I apologize.
That's all right.
But I'd like to see it residential 1 house per acre. Because I bet, honestly, how many council members live on a place that's less than an acre or less than a quarter acre? Well, yours is I don't know. But what I'm saying is that that's not where you want people to grow up. If we keep overbuilding apartments, you know, every kid will have the option of going to school and hoping the school ground has a flower growing on it or a bird flies over. So this is, we don't know how much growth is coming here, but I just dread the thought of more apartments. Now, 14 years ago, I chose to live down there instead of and buy a house down in that neighborhood, which we do call Town Branch Neighborhood, and I'm the coordinator of the neighborhood association there. And I bought down there because it wasn't threatened by development at that time. And everybody said, well, all this is wetland back here. Behind your house is wetland. It's landlocked. Nobody will ever develop it. It can't be developed. Well, that was before the Bush administration changed the core rules, because most of that could be shut down under the previous core regulations. But they set it so you had to be right next to the main stream, preferably a navigable river, for the wetland to be treated as having any value. But the wetland's what protects us from flooding downstream, people that live out toward the lake and people that live immediately downstream from these developments that have already gone in, the Aspen Ridge one time and now Hill Place, which is almost done, but you know what they haven't fixed? I remember people telling me, including maybe somebody sitting up there, well, that's the best thing that can happen to your neighborhood. when the new apartments came to replace the failed Aspen Ridge. The only thing that needed fixing then was the watershed problems. And they haven't increased the amount of storage capacity on the land. They're filling, everything's red dirted, and they didn't fix the only things that needed to be fixed at the time that the new project came in. The only thing was where the mud ran off that land into the creek. And that has persisted till the last most recent rain. Yellow mud. Same kind if you live near Ruskin Heights. You've seen it coming off of there. But anyway, I understand staff's reluctance to get into one of these because I watched how hard they worked on the two they did. And they really did put in, I know they did free overtime. We can't afford to pay them for what they did and the expertise they have. But I'm not sure that a charrette has to occur before you zone obviously inappropriate, rezone those. And I don't know how many, I didn't count these today. I scanned them all in the computer. We counted more than 800 we had, but some of the other people have petitions. And this petition reads, we, the undersigned, are requesting that the Town Branch neighborhood be rezoned to neighborhood conservation, including the land known as the sale barn property, which caused us to get a headline somewhere about wanting to have forced zoning. But in addition, we speak about the National Cemetery. So I would say that I've already got signatures from quite a few neighbors, and I've had their verbal support that we would easily have a charrette of actual residents, and it wouldn't have to be the full-blown thing before we could have a petition and a bunch of neighbors show up that want it rezoned that way. And that would, if that doesn't protect the National Cemetery, it would sure as heck protect the folks that live on these streets and want to fix up their houses and live there. So I support the council going forward with discussion of this, and I hope y'all do proceed with that, and staff will have to be involved to do it right. Thank you.
Thank you all. All right, who's next? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. Oh, let's see, this is a resolution, isn't it? Sarah.
I appreciate the comment about the name and would like to propose, and I'm not sure what the possibility here is. It, I guess, amend it to say Town Branch neighborhood.
I'd second.
Okay.
We have a motion to second to amend it to call it Town Branch. Well.
Mayor.
Yes, Della.
It sounds like to me, from listening to our staff, that we already have in place a process for deciding where the next master plan will be. And so it seems to me that this is a bit redundant.
Okay. Brenda, you're first, and then Matthew.
Well, I don't like disagreeing with my fellow alderperson, but I mean, this particular neighborhood, I've been on the council and we've dealt with the other issues, and I've been advocating that this be studied for quite some time, and feel like that, you know, if this is a way to get it prioritized. And I would like to make one comment that the Fayette Junction, a portion of that was and is in Ward 4.
I knew you were going to say
so,
that.
so Ward 4 was considered, Bob. but anyway, and I do realize this has all been in Ward 1, and that's just because of the growth in this particular area, because it's very affordable. I mean, it's, and I understand the argument for that area, the all that annexed area being considered too, but then right now it's pretty safe. It's zoned like what, RA, and you know, so I just feel like that this is something that's been inappropriately zoned, and so I realize this is not requiring that the staff do this. This is just the council is just saying this should be a priority next time. But that's what I'm saying in supporting this.
Well, what I'd like to keep her comments to is the changing of the name
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I know, I mean, it's been a long
Well,
night.
I support the town branch.
Well, I know.
Neighborhood change.
I know.
I support
What I'd
the
like
name
to keep
change, too.
everything to is the amendment, which is the changing to town branch, okay?
Call me later.
All right, when we get an amendment, then amended, now I can't
And we
even
have a
talk.
second?
Yep. We're ready to vote.
Yeah, we got a
We're
second.
ready to vote.
I'll be there too after that.
I figured you would. All right, public comment on the amended name change.
It's short, Brenda. The Town Branch neighborhood includes the National Cemetery, and I think both should be in the name in this resolution.
Have a-
Thank you.
Don't make it too long.
Just a minute, let me get to public comment, Sarah. Anyone else from the public like to address us on the amended name change? Okay,
Do you want to pull your amendment and change it, Sarah?
Sarah,
Sarah, okay.
you're gonna add them both.
Well, we can, but my question to Kip just now was, it seems that the name can also, we need to refer to it as something now, but that can be adjusted at the time. And so I feel that let's vote on this
Yeah.
and.
I'm with you.
So you're withdrawing your
Oh, the
amendment?
town, let's go ahead and
Yeah, let's-
change it to town branch and,
That's how it's
move on from there. And then that name and even the map boundaries, everything, this is a request to consider this area. And it can be adjusted from there.
Now, everybody's clear, we're voting on the amended name change, all right, to town branch. Is there any other discussion from the council? I hope not. All right. Yes. See, I just folded right on into that. All right. Sandra, would you call the roll, please?
Petty,
Yes.
Rhodes.
Yes.
Farrell.
Yes.
Lucas.
Yes.
Lewis.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Teal.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Now that we've done that, let's go to the amended resolution. And Matthew, you had some comments you'd like to make.
Well, I agree with almost everything that's been said about this. The zoning here is such a problem. It just doesn't make any sense. At the same time, I feel like this resolution is a bone without any meat on it, and we can throw that to you, but it's not going to really do any good, considering that this is just a consideration for staff. And, you know, I can have a conversation with our chief of staff, Dawn, for 15 minutes about an area that needs more study, and probably walk away knowing that he's going to consider that. I'm not sure we need to vote in a resolution to ask staff to consider something. But really, I don't think I'm going to support this because I don't want to give staff that direction. I don't want to assign that priority until we've seen that 2025 plan revisited and updated. I don't want to assign a priority to an area until we have a catalog of all the problem areas and until we can make some sort of assessment, some sort of prioritization based on all of the information about our community, not just something we just found out about.
Okay. Oh,
I just was gonna say, Mayor, that he just stated it, that this is just for consideration, but your point's well made, Matthew. The second thing I was gonna make a comment on Aubrey, talking about going to one house
use
per
all
acre.
those names.
Okay.
Please.
We all know who I'm talking about.
Yes. Talking generalities,
The Hill
Bobby.
Street man. He talked about maybe going to RA1, one house per acre. That wouldn't work, and we spent money to go into many plans that talked about infill and talked about development in the city. So I don't think that's a very good idea right there. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to talk about the amended resolution? All right, seeing none, we've got a motion and a second. Sandra, would you call the roll?
Petty,
No.
Rhodes.
No.
Farrell.
No.
Lucas.
Yes.
Lewis.
Yes.
Gray.
No.
Teal.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
That's 4 votes, so Mayor, you
I will
can-
vote for it.
Resolution passes.
Okay. Number 4, amend number 111.30 retail. An ordinance to amend number 11.30 retail of the Code of Federal to comply with new state law.
Whereas Act 294 of 2009 significantly changed state law concerning Sunday sales of alcoholic beverages and various permits pertaining to wholesale and retail alcoholic beverages. Now therefore be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas, Section 1, that the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas hereby amends Section 111.30 retail, subsection C, retail beer and light wine on premises permit, by repealing subsection 2, hours of operation, and enacting a new replacement subsection 2 as follows. Subsection 2, hours of operation, that shall be unlawful for any person to serve, sell, offer for sale, or give away for consumption on premises any beer or light wine between the hours of 1 a.m. and 7 a.m. on Monday through Saturday, on Sunday except during the hours of 10 a.m. until midnight, on Christmas Day, or during any 24-hour interval designated an emergency period by the mayor, City Council, or any person acting in the mayor's or the City Council's capacity. Section 2, that the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas hereby amends Section 111.30 retail by repealing subsection E, on-premises consumption, hotel, motel, or restaurant permit by repealing subsection 3, hours of operation, and enacting a replacement subsection 3 as follows. Subsection 3, hours of operation, that should be unlawful for any person holding an on-premises consumption hotel, motel, or restaurant permit to sell, offer for sale, serve, give away, or permit consumption of any controlled beverages between the hours of 2 a.m. and 10 a.m. on Monday through Saturday, on Sunday except between the hours 10 a.m. until midnight, on Christmas Day, or during any 24-hour interval designated an emergency period by the mayor, City Council, or any person acting in the mayor or City Council's capacity. Section 3, that the City Council of the City of Fayetteville, Arkansas hereby amends Section 111.30 retail by repealing subsection G in its entirety and enacting a replacement subsection G as shown below. Subsection G, off-premises caterer permit, authorizes the purchase of alcoholic beverages from a retailer to transport to a private function which is being catered by the permit holder and to serve alcoholic beverages to attendees of the private function in conjunction with catered food. Subsection 1, permit fee. There is hereby levied an annual permit fee of $100 for July 2009 through June 30th, 2010, and $250 on July 1st, 2010 and thereafter. Subsection 2, supplemental beverage tax. Off-premises catering activities will be subject to the same supplemental beverage taxes, due dates, and penalties as on-premises consumption hotel, motel, or restaurant permit fees in Section 111.30, subsection E. And then Section E, hours of operation. The hours of operation for off-premises catering permittee shall be the same as those allowed for on-premises consumption hotel, motel, or restaurant permittees in Section 111.30, subsection E. I brought this forward in consultation with the police department, who had analyzed and looked at the new Act 294, which is over 30 pages long and has many sections, and this is one of several amendments or proposed amendments I will bring to you concerning our own alcohol regulation, which is all in Chapter 111. I should note that even though the state law did make it legal for the first time for regular bars and restaurants serving beer and wine to be able to sell on Saturday without a special permit, there is also a section which I mentioned in a memo to you that says that cities and towns may impose additional restrictions providing hours of opening and closing and such other rules and regulations as will promote public health, morals, and safety, which they may by ordinance provide. I mention that to you because you're not required to have the Sunday sales open as long as 10 a.m. to midnight. That's the state law. You can't go beyond that. If you wish to have a shorter time period, you can do that. The ordinance that I drafted was following the state law, 10 a.m. to midnight, but if you wish a shorter period of time, then it's within your power as a city council to determine that that would be the appropriate time for bars to be able to serve beer and wine on Sundays.
Bob.
Kit, when did that state law become effective?
Actually, I think it had an emergency clause that was probably effective a couple months ago.
Thank you.
Move to suspend the rules and go to the second reading.
Second.
Okay. Let me get some public comment on this, okay, before we vote on it. Anyone in the public want to address us on this? All right. Seeing none?
Suspend the rules, go third and final reading.
No, wait a minute, we got to vote on the second. Everybody, we'll just spend an evening of it.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
we've all made little bunches all evening long, myself too. Okay, we have a motion and a second to go to the second reading. Shall the motion pass?
Petty,
Yes.
Rhodes,
Yes.
Farrell,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
Lewis, Gray,
Yes.
Teal.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
An ordinance to amend section 111.30 retail of the Code of Fayetteville to comply with new state law.
Take it away, Bobby.
I move we suspend the rules, go third and final reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go to third and final reading. Any other comments on this? All right. Shall the ordinance pass? Oh, sorry, shall the motion pass? Another little mistake. All righty. It appears we have all
Running
evening.
out of tapes.
I tell you, it's one of those 3-tape meetings, isn't it?
Matthew, 4.
4.
Petty,
Yes.
Rhodes.
Yes.
Farrell.
Yes.
Lucas.
Yes.
Lewis.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Teal.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
An ordinance to amend section 111.30 retail of the Code of Fayetteville to comply with new state law.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yippee.
Well, the folks in Ward 3 have asked me to ask Kit to opine on how this will impact having a Bloody Mary on Sunday morning.
You can have one anytime you want to in your own home.
Okay, good. Then we're okay.
Deal. All right. Shall the ordinance pass?
Petty,
Yes.
Rhodes.
Yes.
Farrell.
Yes.
Lucas.
Yes.
Lewis.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Teal.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any announcements?
Oh,
You
we
got it.
have another item.
Cool. Oh, that's right, the soccer thing. I forgot.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, I forgot.
Poor Connie.
Connie's
And all
been
the-
waiting.
And all the public.
She is here.
Oh, it's not that late.
Bless your heart.
Good
I
evening.
wonder what Connie was doing.
Me too, now I know.
Connie Edvinston with Fayetteville Parks and Recreation. Question about soccer uniforms.
I'm so sorry we added it to the very end of the agenda, Connie. I was just wondering, there was a question raised on a local blog recently, and I don't really agree with the characterization it made of the Parks Department review, but it did ask the question, where is the funding for these uniforms coming from? Is this just straight out of the Parks and Recreation budget, or is there are there sources of donations that are being funneled through this fund? Because when I grew up doing Little League, the businesses donated our team's uniforms, or the parents paid for them. And this seems like a fairly large expenditure for uniforms, so I just wanted to ask about it.
Well, due to the fact that we have over 1,600 kids that play in the fall and in the springtime, so that's a lot of uniforms. But we do receive sponsorships in which companies have their names put on the uniforms, and we receive anywhere from $10,000 to $12,000. The cost of the sponsorship is $250. Land of Frost for the last couple of years has given us $5,500, and another year over $8,000 to assist us. But the uniforms are basically covered within the registration fee from each of the players. And registration ranges from $60 to $90, depending on if they're going to play fall and spring and what age group they are. We provide for ages 4 to 16.
Okay, so your procedure then is you buy the uniforms and then you pursue sponsorships in an ongoing manner year after year?
Yes,
Okay.
certainly do.
Well, thank you for sticking around
Oh,
to answer.
you're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Okay. Do we have a motion and a second to pass the resolution?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on it? Any discussion from the public? Oh, bringing it back to the council, shall the resolution pass?
Petty,
Yes.
Rhodes,
Yes.
Farrell.
Yes.
Lucas.
Yes.
Lewis.
Yes.
Gray.
Yes.
Teal.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Okay, is there any announcements? or
Yes.
anything? Okay, sure.
First off, I'd like to announce that the Watershed Luncheon is going to be held July the 15th. I attended last time, and it was very good. It's with the Environmental Action Committee, and it's kind of an educational thing. They have speakers that come and talk to us about watershed. Last time they had someone from the Beaver Water District, and it's very, very good. Down to the BioBase company allows them to use their room, and it's really, really nice. So if you want, let's see, I have a note here that if you want to come to the luncheon, would you please have, contact John Coleman by this Thursday.
I would add to that that the luncheon series is, if you're interested in coming, please plan to attend all of them. It's to be considered as an ongoing conference, so monthly. So it's as if you're going to attend a conference and you attend each session.
And they do charge for the lunch, so you need to make a reservation and make plans to pay for it. I have one more announcement. Ward 4 meeting is going to be held July the 20th this month. I'm going to be out of town the last Monday of the month, and so everybody said it was okay if I moved it up a week, and so it will be Monday, July the 20th in room 111 here at the Administration Building. Thank you.
One thing that I would like to add, we have the vendor workshop coming up, the reverse trade show coming up this Thursday from 8:30 until noon. We are asking local businesses to come in, and we will be showing them how to do business with the city. We have given out $26 million, I believe, last year. So I want to keep our money going as local as we possibly can, so it will show businesses how to do that. We will have different departments. We'll have different booths set up where the businesses can come and be trained on how to do business with the city. Don?
Thank you, Mayor. One final announcement from staff, and that is in the next 2 weeks, we will finish consolidating all of development services into one location, so that individuals looking to do anything through the development, planning, engineering, or building permitting process will now be able to go into what was the old planning and engineering building, make one-stop shop, and handle everything related to that. So just wanted to make you aware of that. Jeremy Pate, Director of Development Services, has been leading that. And so 2 weeks, come by and see it. They've done a great job getting everybody coordinated together and making it easier now for citizens and developers to come and not bounce between two buildings at City Hall. Thank you.
I think that's great.
Yes, that's super.
This is I'm glad you mentioned that, Don. We toured that today, and that was something that when we first took office, we talked about consolidating everything for where it could be one-stop shopping, and we will have that accomplished real soon. And I would encourage you all to come to the vendors at the Clarion, and because it should be really interesting.
Mayor?
Yes.
I just make a comment about that. I think that, ever since the first of the year, we've talked about economic development and this and that. And I think this is putting, the rubber to the road right there when we start out by doing this. And I appreciate you in the city doing this.
Thank you, Bob. We have a wonderful staff. Anything else? We're adjourned.